Good afternoon. Welcome to our Monday, September 8th, Cabarrus County Board of Education work session. I'm going to start by introducing the folks here on the dais. And we'll start with our teacher of the year, Madison Little. Welcome. And who else we have? We have Shannon Lancaster, board member. We have Catherine Moore, board member. Sam Treadaway, board member. Our superintendent, Dr. Kapicki. Myself, Rob Walter, board chair. Our vice chair, Greg Mills. Board member Pam Escobar. Board member Melanie Freeman, and our board attorney, William Eisenhower. And then our SRO for the evening, if she's in the room, there she is. Thank you for being here. Kim Bond is SRO with us tonight, so thank you so much. So that's our introduction. So with that, we have an opening ceremony. Since we don't have anybody here to perform, we're just going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would stand with me, the flag is right here. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, so we do have a number of items on our agenda today. It's been on board docs since last week. Board members, I need a motion and a second to approve our agenda for the second. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Greg. So a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of adopting our agenda for this evening, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, we have our agenda set. And moving on to item 4, which is board chair and superintendent comments. As we wait for our superintendent to return, a couple things that were brought to my attention is obviously we got the Cabarrus County Fair here in town. So I guess Wednesday night is K-12 night, so our students, they will get in free. That's Wednesday. I guess it's also an early release day, so that's good. And then I was told that we have 2 of our principals that will be volunteering in the dunk tank. So we have Mr. Mooney with Mount Pleasant Middle, and we have Dr. Auerbach with Concord. So that might actually be worth going out and seeing that. So again, the fair, I guess, opens from 3 p.m. and runs to 10 p.m. So the other big one item that we got this weekend is for our band programs. So every year they get together, every one of our Cabarrus County Schools bands on Preview of Champions Day or night, and that's going to be this year at Mount Pleasant High School on Saturday. That is open to the public, and it is very worthwhile to go see that all in one place, and then they have a special performance they do at the end. So I've been there a number of years, and I can't recommend it enough to see all the band programs at one time to see what they were working on for their season. So hopefully the weather will be good for that. And well, the other big thing is I guess the state released some test scores and grades for our schools, and Cabarrus County schools did very well. We'll hear about that in a presentation in a little while. Had a number of schools that improved their grade, moved up. Actually had one school that moved up 2 grades, so that was really exciting. 1 drop. But again, these are just a test score on a 1 day. So a lot of good work goes in with our students, and we really thank our teachers and parents and families for all the work and just seeing all that come to fruition. So those are my board comments, and we just have Dr. Kvicki, you just walked in. Are you ready for your superintendent comments? I'll hand that to you.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Walter. First and foremost, I'd like to remind all of our folks that our schools will dismiss, with the exception of the early colleges, early on Wednesday, September 10th. Our Tier 1 schools will dismiss at 11 a.m., our Tier 2 at noon, and our Tier 3 at 1 p.m. If you need to reference that, please check the website and you'll be able to see which tier your school belongs to. September 10th is also school night at the Cabarrus County Fair with free admission for Cabarrus County students. And please be on the lookout on September 10th for the free admission ticket coming home in your child's book bag. If you just present this card at the gate for entry, you'll be able to enjoy the evening of fun there. So we look forward to that on Wednesday evening. As Mr. Walter just said, we are very excited to share our school performance data with all of you this evening. You're going to see some tremendous results, and you're going to see the dedication and the hard work that our students put into the performance that they've just released to us from across the state. But you're also going to see the hard work that our teachers put into that in terms of preparing our students. And I want to take a moment to thank our teachers and for the excellence that they continue to demonstrate on a daily basis. I've been very fortunate to be able to walk around a lot of the schools at the beginning of this school year, as we do all the time, but it's not lost on me when I see the excellence in the classroom and I see the wonderful work that our teachers are doing on a daily basis, and the dedication, the effort, and the commitment that they put into our students. Cabarrus County should feel very satisfied, pleased, happy, you pick the word, of the education that your students are receiving in Cabarrus County due to the wonderful teachers that we have. We don't thank them enough. They work very hard, and I'm very appreciative to the work that they do, so I want to thank them for their efforts. And then lastly, I'd like to thank all the other people in the school. Because when I say teachers, I mean the teachers in the classroom, I mean the school nutrition folks, I mean our maintenance folks, our transportation workers, obviously our administrators, our executive assistants. Everybody has a hand in this. It's not just one group of people, but I thank everyone who has a hand in helping our children here in Cabarrus County Schools. That is why we continue to improve. It's why we continue to excel. And it's why, as you will see in a couple of minutes when Mr. Carl Sane makes his presentation, we are not just a rising school district, but one of the best school districts in the state of North Carolina. The Cabarrus County Schools Preview of Champions, I think Mr. Walter alluded to this a little bit too. The Preview of Champions is an annual event in which all of our marching band programs in the area come together to a premier competitive field production. And this year's Preview of Champions will be held on Saturday, September 13th, 2025 at Mount Pleasant High School. The event begins at 5 p.m. and admission is $10, and I encourage everyone to come out and support our marching band programs. It's a wonderful event, and it gives our students a chance to show their talents. The Future Fairs is set for October 15th at the Cabarrus Arena and Event Center, and this event features our program choice as well as our college fair, our career fair, and our military recruiters. This has become one of the most attended community events that we have each year, and we look forward to seeing our families and our students on that evening. And then lastly, on September 17th at 6 p.m., Cabarrus County Schools will host the first two community meetings as part of the stakeholder engagement process for the Coltrane Webb STEM Elementary Attendance Boundary Project. This meeting will be held in the gym at R. Brown McAllister STEM Elementary School, and Dr. Bowers will share more on that later this evening. And then lastly, we talk a lot about our performance and the wonderful things that are going on here at Cabarrus County. I'd like to take a moment to thank our Board of Education for your support, because none of this happens without your support and your commitment to your time and effort and what you do here to make sure that we are held accountable and that we continue to improve, and your support is vital to our success. So we thank you for your leadership and your time and the commitment you've given to serve on this Board of Education. So thank you. Mr. Walter?
Thank you, Dr. Kubicki. So we'll move on to Section 5, which is the reports section. And we'll start with 5.01, which is committee reports from board members. And Shannon, did you have something that you'd like to bring to our attention?
The Cabarrus County Education Foundation has several events that are happening now or coming up. Right now they have an online 50-50 raffle. It will end on September the 18th. And at 7 o'clock, the drawing will take place at the food bank in Kannapolis. They will also have an event called Bagging for Books. This is going to be a cornhole competition that is sponsored by Combs Chiropractic, but the Education Foundation will be the beneficiary of this fundraiser. And supposedly we're going to have professional cornhole players attend that. And then the last is they're going to have their Partner in Education luncheon on Thursday, October the 30th, 11:30 to 1. So please go to the Cabarrus Education Foundation website for all those details. And second, I am the liaison for City of Kannapolis, and their meetings conflict with some committees that I'm on. I've been waiting, back in August they were going to start televising their meetings, but that hadn't started yet, so hopefully pretty soon they will start televising their meetings, and that way all of us can keep up with what's going on in Kannapolis. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for committee reports? Pam.
Thank you. I just wanted to talk a little bit about our interns. We had orientation at the end of August, and we just had our first of many sessions that we'll be having this semester today with Brian Cohn, who took the time to explain construction and building and all the things that we do to go through that process from buying the land all the way to getting a school off the ground. So I'm very proud of this group. We have a large group of interns. If you go to the Board of Education website page, you will see, thank you to Phil Furr and his team, you'll see a picture of all the interns, so you can see how many of that we have this year. We're going to have many in the fall and spring. And 2 of our interns are here tonight. I'm going to say thank you so much for attending. So that's part of the requirement too. In addition to attending sessions that are provided by district staff, we also ask them to attend one of our meetings. They don't necessarily stay for the entire meeting because they drive and it's late and it gets dark, but we encourage them to finish watching the meeting on YouTube and join all the other people who are watching our meeting. So thank you for that attention.
And we are glad that you're here, and thank you, Pam, for the spearheading and helping organize these interns and all the opportunities that they have to learn about our school system. It's a lot of extra time, and you don't get paid for it, so we appreciate it. Anybody else? Okay, we did have our Finance Committee meeting, and we'll have an agenda item that's following up from that a little bit later. And when we talk about, we got an update on transportation. We had our new transportation director, Mr. Herlocker, there to give us an overview on a lot of different things. And then we talked about the update to the lunch balances, where we are at the beginning of the school year. All the balances were 0 at the start of the year, and we've got a lot of different measures that are in place to hopefully prevent having the same big deficits towards the end of the year. So we will be staying on that quite a bit more this year. And then I think we talked about our budget process, and Mr. Penn's going to give us an update next month for that as well. So that's the Finance Committee, and the only last item I had is we have our planning fall session. I think it's the 29th. Is that right, Laurie? Looking for some agenda items from board members. One of the things that we did talk about is these test scores that have come out today. We're really giving us an opportunity to dig into that along with our school improvement plans. So that would take some time, but there might be time for some other items. If you do have items, please let us share that with us. So that's all I had for committee reports. Sam.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. I should have cleared this in advance. This is not a committee report, but I feel like it's important to recognize that last week we lost a really special person, Ruby Spears. And what a rewarding life, and touched so many people in this room and outside this room. And I had the good fortune of working with her, and then afterwards, for years when she retired, she did our suspension review process, where students that were long-term suspended, she would meet with the parents and with the administrators, and she did such a great job of telling parents things they really didn't want to hear but needed to hear. And then she did it in a way that was obviously caring. And anyway, she'll be missed.
She very much will be. Maybe a moment of silence at our business meeting would be appropriate. Thank you, Sam. All right, we'll move on to item 5.02, which is the school performance grades overview. We have Mr. Carl Singh, who's been digging deep into these numbers for us, and he's got some good news to share with us.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board, and the viewing audience. It is my privilege to get to share some incredible outcomes and celebrate some achievements that our students and schools will get to see based on this data that was just released by the state of North Carolina. So the overview for this is that we continue to outperform the state with higher letter grades on average, more growth and higher proficiency rankings than the majority of the state of North Carolina. The performance metrics continue to improve across the board, including graduation rate, college career readiness indicators, and grade level proficiency. What I would encourage you to think about throughout this presentation is consider this through the lens of several different stakeholder groups. So when you see drastic changes in proficiency and in graduation rate and in testing outcomes from a student's perspective, that means more opportunities for our students, right? We have more students that are on grade level. That means that they're more well prepared for the next phase of their life. We have more students that are achieving levels 4 and 5, which means that they get to take more advanced course opportunities as they move towards high school and beyond. I'd also like for you to think about this from a community perspective. So we have a lot of data that confirms with confidence that we are one of the highest performing and achieving school districts in the state of North Carolina. I'd like for you to think about this from a staff perspective, both from the teachers and the administrators. So our staff worked their tails off all last year to meet the needs of every one of our kids. And not only are we achieving at a very high rate, but you'll see some growth numbers that says our students are learning at a greater rate and progressing at a greater rate than the majority of the rest of the state of North Carolina. Of course, our administrators put a lot of systems into place to make sure that students can be well received and that we have supports in place to make sure that they can learn. And then I would also like to commend our district's supports that we've put in place to help our students be as successful as possible and to help our staff be as successful as possible in meeting those students' needs. We had a huge advanced teacher role initiative last year that empowered our best teachers and leveraged them to touch more students. We have support models in place from a district perspective so that we have differing levels of support at schools. And then I would like to remind the group that we went through realignment last year. We moved tens of thousands of students to new schools, whether it was through realignment or whether it was moving from elementary to middle and middle to high school. And our schools welcomed those students, a lot of fresh faces, and we did even better than the year before. So I think there's a lot to celebrate. I just encourage you to consider it from those different angles as we're walking through some of the different data points. Before we started, I wanted to share a few definitions just to make sure everyone was clear, because I'm going to throw some acronyms out there. The school performance grades are the rating system that the state provides. We actually get a score from 0 to 100, and that is, they use that model to create an A through F letter grade system. It is comprised of achievement and growth. Achievement is 80% of the formula. This is everything on how students fare on end of grade and end of course assessments, to the graduation rate, to English learner progress, how many students took advanced math courses, and ACT and work keys qualifying scores. Growth is 20%. Think of growth as how students fared relative to their projection. So if your students are outperforming their projection, then you're going to get a higher growth score than if they undershoot their projections. You'll hear me reference grade level proficiency. That is whether a student scored at least a level 3 on the EOG or EOC and is deemed on grade level. College and career readiness means that they've scored a level 4 or 5, which is a higher mark on the EOG or EOC. And then for frame of reference, sometimes when you see proficiency numbers and graduation rates and you see different numbers floating around, it's helpful to kind of ground those numbers in some perspective. So I've offered 3 different comparison districts. The largest 12 districts in the state, myself and Java Likes work with those other 12 districts. We share the same logistical challenges. Sometimes when you have large numbers of students, it's helpful to get some perspective. So I've given some comparisons to the largest districts. The Southwest region is the region that constitutes the larger Charlotte metropolitan area, so I've given some perspective around that. And then last year, NCDPI released a study that grouped all of the districts in North Carolina into buckets. I'm calling that the typology districts. Our typology district is largely the suburbs of some of our larger cities in the state of North Carolina. So just outside of Charlotte, just outside of Raleigh, and so on. So on to some positive data. We're going to start with school performance grades. So again, this is that A through F letter grade system. Again, they start with a score of 0 through 100, and they convert that to an A through F letter grade, as you can see on the left. Across the state of North Carolina, only about 7.5% of schools achieve an A letter grade. It's kind of the inverse of in a classroom. In a classroom, when you grade students on a test, you typically start at 100, and every time you don't turn in an assignment or every time you miss a question, you're going down on your grade. In the school performance grade system, it's the opposite. You almost start at a 0, and you have to build up every time a student passes a test. So it's very difficult to score a letter A. In Cabarrus County schools, I'm excited to share that almost a quarter of our schools achieved a letter A grade, which would be 4th in the state of North Carolina. And about half of our schools achieved either a letter grade of A or B, which is, again, very exciting to share. The next slide shares some perspective, again, with those other surrounding districts, the large districts and our similar districts. So Cabarrus County Schools, again, you can see the actual proportion of schools that falls into these categories. We had 41 schools, and again, 9 of them were in A, so that is 22% of our schools achieved an A. Almost half of our schools received an A or a B. You can see that significantly outperforms however you want to compare us. We are outperforming those groups. The largest districts in the state only have about half the rate of A schools that we have. You can see the Southwest region again has a significantly larger percentage of D's than we have, and then our similar districts again, we have about twice the rate of A schools as similar districts to us. I did break out the state of North Carolina versus charter, and I felt like I was just putting too many words on the page. Charter schools are within 0.5% as the state of North Carolina. It's very similar to the rest of the state, but you can see 22% of A schools would be the 4th highest mark across the 115 school districts, and then 48% of our A or B schools would be the 10th highest mark out of the 115 school districts. So we are achieving scores, and we are having really good outcomes relative to the rest of the state according to this model. I wanted to call out a few specific schools that saw increases. You heard Mr. Walters reference this before. Hickory Ridge Elementary School moved from a B to an A. I'm sure Ms. Patel was excited about that. It is very difficult to move to an A rating. You have to get above 85% of students meeting on grade level. Tremendous work by that school and staff. You can see Patriots Elementary School, Pitt School Road Elementary School, and Weddington Hills all moved from a C to a B. Weddington Hills had one of the highest achievement school performance grade changes in the district. They moved their score by almost 11 points, if I'm not mistaken. Northwest Cabarrus had the highest movement. They had a 16-point jump in their school performance grade. And then A.T. Allen and I believe that is actually supposed to say, no, I'm sorry, Roberta Road Middle School both moved from a D to a C. So exciting movement on this chart. You can see that 7 schools increased their school performance grade. If you actually went back to the numerical score, 34 out of 41 schools either scored the same or increased their score, which is astronomical. I feel like, again, that speaks to a lot of systems in place that helps our schools meet students' needs. The next we're going to talk about the school growth component. So keep in mind that school growth counts as about 20% of the formula, and I'd like to remind you that this really references how did students fare relative to their projections. So students that have been successful are going to be compared, and they achieve really high marks, they're going to be compared to other students across the state with that same background, and then similarly across the entire spectrum. So this chart provides some perspective about the state of North Carolina. This year, a little over 40% of schools across the state met growth, and then the remainder of the schools are kind of split into 2 categories. Exceeding growth was 28%, and then did not meet growth was 29%. Sometimes it's helpful to think about this in terms of a race, where you're running in a race alongside 100 other or 99 other runners. If you are passing other runners, then you are exceeding growth, right? You are passing people in line. If you are getting past, then you are not meeting growth. You are moving further backwards. And so that's why exceeding growth and not meeting growth typically is about even, right? The more people that you pass, that means they are getting passed by other people. You can see in Cabarrus County schools, almost half of our schools exceeded growth. About 4 times as many schools exceeded growth as did not meet growth. So exciting to share here. And then of course, 35 of the 40 schools that received a growth score either met or exceeded growth. The next slide breaks it down again with those comparison districts. So Cabarrus County Schools once again outperforms the largest districts, the Southwest region, our similar districts in the state of North Carolina in the percent of schools that exceed growth. The 47.5% of schools exceeding growth would be the 9th highest mark out of the 115 school districts. And then if you were to combine exceeding and meeting, we would be the 12th highest district. So again, very positive stats here. For perspective, sometimes when you see the school districts that would have passed us, keep in mind we have a much larger number of schools than some of the school districts that might have passed us. I wanted to call out some specifics. W.R. Odell Elementary School had the #1 overall growth out of every elementary school in the state of North Carolina, which is astounding. They also had the top reading growth score in North Carolina out of every elementary and middle school in the state. And then if you were to expand it to every school in the state, their score would have been the 5th highest score. in the state of North Carolina. Hickory Ridge Middle School was a hair behind Odell Elementary School, whereas Odell was 5th in the state. Hickory Ridge was number 6th in the state out of 2,541 schools. It's also exciting to see every single high school in our district either met or exceeded growth, which I believe is the first time that's happened. And then I drew a line about where the 10% cutoff is for growth, and we had 9 different schools that had landed in the top 10% of the state, which is astounding. So Odell Elementary and Hickory Ridge, as mentioned. Also Hickory Ridge, W.R. Odell and Hickory Ridge Middle, Hickory Ridge Elementary, Concord High School, Harrisburg Elementary School, Weddington Hills Elementary School, Pitt School Road Elementary School, Cabarrus Kannapolis Early College, and R. Brown McAllister were all in the top 10% of the state of growth. Some exciting metrics there. And then we also have this list of schools that exceeded growth last year and then also exceeded growth this year. So back-to-back years of exceeding growth. Again, what that means is these students are learning at a faster rate than their counterparts from across the state. Obviously, if you can do that 2 years in a row, then you've made some significant gains for your students. So schools want to be on this list once. It's pretty impressive to be on there back-to-back years. This slide shows those two pieces that we just now talked about all on the same slide. So I've got a comparison to the largest districts in the state. On one hand, you can see how those largest districts do fare as far as growth is concerned in blue, and then in green you can see how those large districts fare on their school performance grade. I have worked in 2 of these districts. The goal is to be near the top of one of these charts, and I'm incredibly excited to share that we're at the top of both of the charts, right? We are, our students are learning at a faster rate than the other students in these other large districts, and then we're also achieving at a high rate, scoring high marks with the school performance letter grade. Next up, I wanted to share some numbers underlining and the baseline for a lot of what we just shared, which is our EOG and EOC proficiency. So the first chart shows a timeline since before COVID, through COVID, and then until now. Most of the state obviously had a significant dip during COVID and then had a rebound. Much of the state of North Carolina slightly and incrementally has progressed in the years since. You'll see some specific bullet points on a subsequent slide that shows actual districts and how they're moving, but it's been a little bit of a plateau. It was exciting to see this year we got over a 2% improvement in our proficiency, which is a pretty significant jump when you're talking about 86,000 tested scores. Getting a 2% jump is more than is a pretty significant amount. So the next slide actually shows across time what our proficiency moved. So we lost 10% of proficiency from 2019 to 2021. I want to keep in mind there was no testing done during the spring of 2020 for obvious reasons. You can see I put in the far right column our rank in the state of North Carolina beside our proficiency number. So we have now moved back into this cluster of where Union and Wake are. So these top 3 school systems where I feel like we've kind of created some separation between the next group of schools and ourselves with Union and Wake. It is interesting to look at this chart and the next chart, and again, there's a lot of stagnation at some schools. You still do see some districts that are getting a 2% jump or a 3% jump here and there, but for the most part, there's been a lot of stagnation from 22 to 24. Most of the COVID bounce back across the state has already occurred, so it was exciting to see us get over a 2% proficiency jump. The next chart shows the similar data for our surrounding districts. There's not much more for me to share aside from allowing you to take a second and gain some perspective about what our surrounding counties look like. Again, I'm incredibly excited about the 2.1% proficiency jump from 24 to 25. This final chart also breaks down our proficiency across multiple different assessments. So on the left-hand side, you can see the assessment that is being broken down. I gave 3 different years so that you can kind of see how our rankings have moved across time. So for instance, our subject proficiency, all subjects from the 23 school year to 24 school year, we increased by 0.7%, and our rank actually dropped, We went from 14th in the state to 15th in the state. So sometimes an increase in proficiency does not necessarily mean that you moved up in the state rankings. If everybody else also had the same increase in proficiency, you can see we moved from 15th in the state to 7th in our ranking across the state this year. That's a very significant jump. When you're on either end of the bell curve, it takes a lot of traction to get some changes in ranking. It's also exciting to see our ranking broken down across every subject. Almost every subject, we had very consistent growth across many subjects in our state ranking. It's my understanding that our ranking of 7th in the state is the highest that we've ever had in Cabarrus County Schools history. The next few charts are going to share some cohort numbers. So the purpose of this chart is just to help you understand and how to read the next few charts that are going to be shown. So sometimes this staircase approach helps you track the students from one grade level to the next grade level as they move through the grades. So you can see, I believe this chart is reading. So in 3rd grade, our students in 2020 and 2021 school year were at 50.1% proficient. When those students moved into 4th grade, the next school year, they moved to 57.5% proficient. So the color coding on the next slide is really intended to help you track student groups as they move throughout the grade levels. In reading, you're going to see several different patterns emerge. One pattern is to track that 3rd grade cohort across the top, or that 3rd grade subject. We tend to land around 53.5% proficient in 3rd grade reading. The state of North Carolina has about an 11-point jump between 3rd grade reading and 4th grade reading, and I don't know enough about the psychometrician methodology to know what's happening in 3rd and 4th grade. We do have school improvement plans geared around early literacy to help address this, but you can see we have a very consistent high 53% proficient in 3rd grade, but it is very exciting to watch those students as they move into subsequent grade levels gaining proficiency. That's exactly the model that you would like to see. And that's much easier said than done. You were trying to get kids caught up onto grade level on a more difficult test, right? So to move from 50, let's look at this year's 8th graders, to move from 57% proficient on the 7th grade test up to 64% proficient on the 8th grade test, 7% of kids across 2,500 assessments is a significant number, and again, they're taking a harder test. So there's some incredibly positive numbers. You can see the whole right column is above 60, and you can see the other columns don't have 60s everywhere, right? It's the first time our rating has been above 60% proficient. Yes, sir?
Did you tease out transients, or is it just cohort groups on those longitudinal?
This is good question. This is just our straight proficiency from one year to the next. So as students come and go, they're filtering in and filtering out. The students in green in 2021 in that 3rd grade, I would imagine it's a largely different group of students than land in 7th grade in 24-25. That's a good question. The next chart shows the same data set for math across subjects. So in the spring of 21, we were in the low 50% proficiency. Again, that was right after COVID. We had an immediate bounce back. Generally, you can track the cohorts and see in many places increases. There are a few places where we need to call some additional attention and put some more resources in place and some supports in place. But it's interesting to look at this from a cohort perspective. It's also incredibly exciting to see 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade math is almost at 70% proficient. If you recall, that's about where Union County is. So our elementary math is hitting the Union County numbers, and those kids are coming up to middle school, right? So we have some excitement on this page. The 8th grade math, just so that you're aware, includes both the students taking the 8th grade math EOG as well as the high school math 1 assessment. And so their combination proficiency is 55.5%. I just want to call.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
So that does include the math 1 as well.
That's correct.
Okay.
That is the combination of all students that took either assessment in 8th grade. We do pull some students out. It's not a large number of students, but the students that took math 2 in 8th grade are not included. And if I'm not mistaken, we had one student taking math 3 in 8th grade that would not be excluded. Students in Cabarrus County have a wealth of opportunities. So we typically have somewhere on the order of 40 to 70 students taking math 2 in middle school that would not be included.
All right, let's let you go through the presentation, then we'll ask our questions.
Sure. I wanted to call out some schools that are just doing some unbelievable things, as I did on the previous slides. Northwest Cabarrus had a 20% gain in proficiency. Rocky River had an 8.5% jump. Harrisburg, who is a B school, had an improvement in their proficiency of 7%, which is incredible. Roberta Road had a 6.5% proficiency gain. In high school, the PLC had a 14% improvement in proficiency. Early College of Technology increased by 6.8%. Concord High School by 5.8%, and J.M. Robinson High School by 5.8%. So very positive numbers from a proficiency standpoint. You have to have a lot of schools moving the needle to have a 2% jump. Next, I want to share some graduation and college and career readiness metrics. So the first slide shows some historical precedent about where we've been with graduation rate. I'm excited to share that the 91.7% graduation rate is the highest in Cabarrus County Schools history. Every time I've heard Dr. Kapicki reference this, he's called out Mr. Palmer for the hard work around graduation rate. But you can see we've had some significant jumps in the last 4 years. The state of North Carolina has moved up incrementally by 1.3%. We've moved up by over 3%. And again, we're doing that over you guys shake the hands. 2,800 kids, right? It's hard to move by 3% when you're shaking 2,800 kids' hands. So that's some exciting work on the behalf of our high school teams, which is graduation coaches and counselors and school administrators, MTSS coaches tracking these students down and helping them get across the finish line. I wanted to call out again some of our high schools that are paving the way and really highlighting this. Above 95% graduation rate is Cabarrus Early College of Technology, Cabarrus Kannapolis Early College, Cox Mill High School, and Northwest Cabarrus High School. And then the largest increases this year were Concord High School moving up 5.5%, West Cabarrus moving up 4.2%, and then the PLC moving up 2.4%. When you can have a slide that details more school performance metrics and it's just kind of an afterthought, you know you've got some really good data. So our English learner progress increased by over 8%. So the English learner progress assessment is how many students either exit the program entirely or maintained on progress. It's helpful to think about that assessment as every year the test gets harder. So if as a third grader, if you're a student that's an English learner, you've got to read, speak, listen on a third grade level. If you do not exit the program or make progress the next year, you've got to do that on a fourth grade level. So that is a continually moving target, and you can see that we made a significant gain in English learner progress. Our ACT qualifying score increased, and then the work keys is an assessment of workforce readiness, and you can see that we achieved a higher mark on that as well. I want to call out a few school-specific highlights. Boger Elementary and Cox Mill Elementary somehow tied for 12th place in English learner progress at 81.3%. They were 12th out of over 2,500 schools. Cabarrus Early College of Technology was our highest score with the ACT. They would have ranked 33rd in the state of North Carolina. And then both the Early College of Technology as well as the Cabarrus Kannapolis Early College were both ranked in the top 40 of the combination ACT work keys. So the ACT work keys is a measure of are the students prepared for college on the ACT or a career on the work keys. And then finally, I wanted to share a few some additional information about how different subgroups of students are performing. So for perspective, this is our proficiency and ranking across all of the tested subjects that the state of North Carolina provides. I referenced a little bit ago some of the systems that we have in place, and so some of those systems are things like advanced teacher roles or the support that our different departments provide schools. Another support that we have is a keen eye for data, and we are constantly reviewing data with schools and having data digs about how things are progressing or not progressing. And so we did not have a lot of surprises when we saw this data. We knew back in May what the data was saying. We felt pretty confident back in March what it was looking like as we took the benchmarks. As schools needed some supports, we were there to help provide those supports as needed. And so when we got to Summer Leadership Academy, we asked schools to focus on a few things. the things that we're focused on were the reading EOGs. You guys saw what it looked like in third grade reading. There's an opportunity there. We knew that high school math 1 and then the ACT and work keys were going to be opportunities. So you will see school improvement plans written around these goals. There's some validation here to know that those are the places that the state also said maybe we're not ranked as well as we could be. So the next 2 slides are going to break this down into more subgroups. The first subgroup set these are state of North Carolina tags for students. So students that are deemed as academically and intellectually gifted or economically disadvantaged, our English learners that I've referenced, our homeless students, and then students with disabilities. You can see on each chart what their grade level proficiency is, as well as that rank. That rank is how does that group compare to the same group across the state of North Carolina. So for instance, our biology academically intellectually gifted students are 93.6% proficient. When compared to the other AIG students across the state of North Carolina, that would have ranked 31st. So each of these rankings are compared to the same group across the rest of the state. And then we've also got the same subgroups across our racial and ethnic groups. So we have a lot to highlight. You can see that the all ranking really puts in perspective how well we're doing across a lot of assessments. And I know a few of you had questions. I thought
Yeah, well,
stop us.
but thank you. I love the smile on your face and the time that you took to go through all
I'm
this.
excited that I get to be the one to share such good news.
So before we have board member questions, we're going to allow our Teacher of the Year, Madison Little, kind of give us your thoughts on a lot of data here, but do the benchmarks actually help you as well on your?
Yeah, so from my perspective, I look solely at the students with disability subgroup because that's what I am working with on a daily basis. However, I do believe that our benchmark scores do allow us to make sure that we're tailoring instruction and making adaptations to what we're doing in the school building. So having that piece of data has been really helpful from my perspective, and I know at the school that I'm at as well.
Thank you. All right, board members, questions, thoughts? Sam?
I'm not exactly sure what the ACT qualifying scores, I mean, I know what those words mean, but
So the state, yes, so the state of North, I'm gonna see if I can hop back to it. The state of North Carolina sets a qualifying score for entrance into the University of North Carolina system.
when it says we went from 44 to 55,
So we
that's
had-
not the percentage of students taking it, that's the percentage of students that qualified.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Board members? Shannon?
Well, great job, everybody from the school level, all the folks that Dr. Kapicki mentioned, even the families. I think we need the family support of the schools. And while you're sitting here saying all this, I'm thinking our per pupil expenditure ranks where? So we're doing all this with less money. Can you kind of quickly share that? Because I think this is great what you guys are doing.
I'm happy to speak to the fact that we are doing some really good things. I think, I mean, there's some, I'll let Phil speak, there's some intentionality around the decisions we make. Right?
So bringing up Mr. Penn to the podium to answer that one.
No, I'm smiling because this is something we talk about all the time, right? We know we rank in the bottom 2 or 1 or 3 of the state when we look at total spending across all the different sources, federal, state, local, on a per pupil basis. Dr. Kapicki and I have had conversations around this. It's not necessarily the total dollars that you spend, but how you spend them to get the most effective gains and student outcomes from the dollars that you are spending. Right? I mean, we do a lot of work to try to prioritize how we spend those dollars. Would I like to have more to work with? Yeah, no question, right? But I think it comes down to when you're in that kind of situation, the money is tight, you really do start prioritizing around what gives you the most efficacy in getting better student outcomes for your money. So, okay.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Anything else, Shannon? On this side? All right, let's go ahead. Steve.
Last week, we were able to visit two elementary schools, and we got to see the new reading program for the first time. And I'm excited about the possibilities there. One of the things I noticed was the rigor. This is up the bar. I mean, that was pretty obvious. The kids were struggling with some of the things, which is good. But I'm excited to see the potential that that has for us.
Can't speak to the reading curriculum as much as Mrs. Reeves could. I had a third grader last year. The third grade, if you haven't had a chance, NCDPI puts out the released assessments on their website. The third grade reading assessment is not an easy assessment. Students are not just trying to read words and show that they can read the words. They have to be able to read a complex text and then go back and answer questions about what the author's intent was on that complex text. So obviously the reading curriculum that we've purchased should set a floor, an experience for all students to be able to access. It should help. I know Mr. Treadaway mentioned some transients, so as students move between schools, it's helpful that we've all got one common curriculum. And then of course it also frees up our teachers to focus on how to teach as opposed to just what we're using to teach each day. The valuable conversations in the PLC go from looking at data, thinking about students' needs, and then designing the lesson that best meets those students' needs.
Okay, Greg?
I'm glad to be excited about these numbers. I really am. It's hard not to be excited about what you shared with us tonight. And you did speak briefly about realignment, and shuffling kids around shouldn't affect our district scores too much. Basically, the same group of kids. But what explains is that a possible explanation, or what explains huge jumps at some schools like Northwest Middle?
I'm sure that is a factor. Obviously, middle school saw, if you guys recall, middle school experienced the most changes in realignment. And I don't want to speak too much to Dr. Bowers, but one goal was to create feeder patterns, which meant that if you were to move the middle schools, and you would create more vertical feeder patterns. So there was quite a bit of change in middle school. Northwest Cabarrus did see a significant student population shift. I'm not sure that would account for the entire shift.
Sure.
I hate to get into.
They're doing great work there too.
Specifics.
Yeah, I don't want to downplay that.
It's definitely it's a factor, but I think it's one factor among many. So I think when we start really ripping this apart and breaking it down by subgroups, socioeconomic groups, ethnic groups, grade levels, things of that nature, you'll see a lot of you can really kind of get a feel for how much it impacted it. But it was not the sole reason for the increases in schools. I think really I think that all would agree with me on this in terms of the folks in the room, that the reason why you're seeing such improved academics and student achievement over time is because of the teachers in the classroom. And the research is very clear about this. That the most significant, there's two things. Research will tell you that the most significant person in the school is the teacher in the classroom. Follow equally on a parallel line that the leadership of the building, the principal in the building, has the other largest impact on the instructional capacities that take place in the building. So I think our principals and our teachers are doing a phenomenal job, and then all the other folks we mentioned, and as Mrs. Lancaster pointed out, that our families support our system, and that shows and has a great impact on the achievement of our kids.
Okay, well, we're going to dig into that at our fall planning session a little bit more. These are public numbers, though. If somebody wants to actually look these things up, or any school in the state, how do they do that? By visiting the DPI website?
Yes, sir. There's a DPI dashboard where you can look at this year's stats. There's also some spreadsheets if you dig into the NCDPI accountability website. I should have put a link on here, but generally the easiest way for a member of the public to go would be to look up the NCDPI accountability dashboards.
But most of the questions we get is, what's the grade of my kid's school, right?
That's
So
right.
that's all on there as well.
Yes, sir.
And it has a history of what the grade was for the last 4 years. Right.
I cannot recall off the top of my head if they've updated the performance grades website or not, but it would live on that website. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, good news. Thank you. That's Pam.
Thank you so much. It takes everybody to get here. And I'm looking at the graduation rates, and it's so exciting that we're there. It just means to me, like, you can have faith sending your kids to Cabarrus County schools and they're going to be ready for the world. And that's really what we're trying to do. It's not just about test scores, it's about being ready to face the future. So I guess the question that I have is even if we're not looking to improve, but we just need to maintain, explain all the work that's going behind that to stay on top of it now. I mean, we're in a new school year. This is great, but this was last year.
Yeah.
Like, we have to deliver every day, and we are. But how are you guys staying on top of that?
Dr. Kubicki, you want to respond to that?
I'll let Mr. Sane go with it, but the first thing I want to emphasize is we don't like the word maintain. We always talk about continuous improvement, and then he's laughing because he knows whenever I hear the word maintain, I'm like, wait a minute. And I appreciate the question, but I just want to reinforce everyone that our goal is continuous improvement. We're very happy about the results, and we're very thrilled with the outcomes. But now it's okay. How can we be better, and how do we keep climbing and moving forward? Mr. Sane?
I know several of you were able to come to summer leadership. At summer leadership, schools walked in. They heard information about best practices for teaching and learning. We gave them data sets about the students that were walking into their building. So we were giving them real-time information about the previous test history that had happened a week before, so that the middle schools knew exactly what was coming from their 5th grade cohort. They're able to use that to come up with, problem solve around what their school improvement goals are. That was a work session, right? We had 43 school teams coming in to do a significant amount of work over the middle of their summer to make for positive outcomes for students. As we've transitioned to Infinite Campus, we have had some difficulty getting our data systems up and running this fall, and it's going to come. But I say that because you wouldn't believe how many times I've got a phone call from a principal wondering, when is this report going to be ready? When is that report going to be ready? Because they're itching to know, are they essentially doing right by their kids? Are their kids, where are their kids at? What do they need? What do we need to do to meet their needs? We have, that spirit of continuous improvement is built into all the work we do through summer leadership. It's built into the tiered supports that we have from the central office level. But then I really think it's the heart of what our teachers and principals do every day.
It sparks something because it is more than a test score. We are doing a lot more than that. And one of the things that we do here is we do approve a strategic plan that takes into a number of factors. And I think Dr. Kubicki, you were working on an update to that based on our most recent data. So we have a target.
You will have a copy fresh in your hands next Monday evening.
Thank you. All right, anything else on our topic for this evening?
I just want to shout out a couple other metrics that I liked. The 3rd grade reading scores, we know that's like a pivotal year. But you showed those numbers where those kids continue to improve, over the course of their career. And we hear over and over again the kids that don't make that mark in the 3rd grade, it's very hard to make it up. And clearly we're doing something here that is moving the needle on that. I appreciate that. And then also, as I dug into some of the subgroups, some of these subgroups are outperforming the district score, which means that we're closing achievement gaps, which is another really important metric that I want to make sure that people don't miss. And I thank you for all your work, everybody in this room for all your hard work, and of course all the teachers and staff that are in our schools.
Thank you, Greg. All right, let's move on to 5.03. And we have the Culture and Web STEM Elementary School boundary process with Dr. Bowers. Welcome to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly it's good to see you this evening, members of the board, you as well, and Dr. Pickey. Always enjoy following Mr. Sane when he does the school improvement and school performance grades, all right? Mine's not quite as celebratory in that sense, but we are excited because we will be opening a replacement elementary school next fall. Some of you mentioned the term realignment during the last conversation and the impacts that it may or may not have had in certain arenas and certain schools across the district. Obviously, one of the things that we certainly want to be cognizant of and conscientious of is anytime we create a new school boundary, that what is the makeup of that school? What does the student distribution look like? What are the demographics, and what are some of the things we need to consider such that, to the greatest extent possible, we have that school closely represent the demographics of the district. Now, again, in many cases that's more challenging than other parts of the county just because of the way in which zip codes and houses certainly where they lie, but we're always going to give attention to that to ensure that when we set these things in motion that really is a critical planning component of the work ahead. I'd be remiss if I weren't to mention tonight, I stand here really on the backs of the team, the planning team for this project. I can't thank enough the work that Mr. Louder has done, Mr. Cohn has done, and really I always call her the great Oz behind the curtain. That's Frances Lane. She is our demographer and does a phenomenal job keeping us really informed on student movement, student matriculation, what are some of the growth projections that we might encounter in the upcoming years, and how does that really play out at the school level? So really all these pieces are critical to it. But again, that project planning team gets the opportunity to work with a phenomenal district leadership team as well, and I'll point those out as we go through the presentation. So as I mentioned, this presentation is really designed to be able to give us an idea of what will be the project kickoff for the Boundary Project at Fort Coltrane Webb STEM Elementary School. So before I really get too deep into this, it's, well, what boundary are we talking about? And really have some opportunity to be able to highlight that and bring it to your attention here when we look at this. The Coltrane Webb STEM Elementary School boundary is the boundary you see highlighted in yellow there in the center of this map. We've drawn a circle around it to bring attention to it. But it's a very small geographic boundary as it currently exists, because historically this school served a very small community in the downtown Concord area. Obviously, as we look forward and we have opportunities to be able to look at student reassignment, utilization of buildings, ways in which we can continue to enhance our facilities for the advancement of students to really play into a lot of the results that you saw, this now aligns with, again, that school had a great history and did a wonderful opportunity at serving the needs of its students, but we also know too that to be able to make sure that we're good stewards of the resources we have, a larger school that is able to serve a larger boundary would certainly benefit us as we move forward. So that'll be part of this project and sort of the effort here. So understanding what area will really be that under investigation is important to know what surrounding areas might be impacted as we dive deeper into the process. Now again, I'll leave with this tonight, is that this is really an overview of the process. Really haven't gotten into the meat and potatoes just yet and started looking at the data framing exercises. We're still early in the school year, and we want to let some of this year's numbers come in so that we have a fuller picture of what we might expect. But again, it's important to know what steps we will follow such that yourselves, our stakeholders, and then others in the community know this is sort of the work that went into the boundary development. Little guiding criteria, again, as we mentioned, realignment. For those of you who certainly were on the board at the time that we went through the last realignment effort, that was a large-scale, comprehensive, district-wide realignment. And really it was important from the perspective of the board to say, what are the things that matter? And that has really set for us a guiding framework for what should be those drivers when it comes to looking at future boundaries. What are the determining factors, and how can they be grounded in the data? And so through conversations with the board and through feedback and exchanges, it was very clear that utilization was important when looking for future boundary development. It was important from the board to say feeder patterns are important to us such that we can keep students intact as best as possible through cohorts as they matriculate throughout each of the years in school. We want to make sure proximity is important. Keeping kids closest to their neighborhood school is important for our families. We know what it does for the support at the school, and certainly the contributions that family members can make. And then ultimately, I mentioned earlier, the demographics. What does the household income look like within that particular makeup? What are we looking like for the number of those students who might be identified as multilingual learner or English as a second language? And then also too, educational attainment. How does that play out, and how does that compare to our district averages? So all these things will certainly help us inform the process such that when an option is developed, these will be key elements that will be included in that, and you, the board, will be able to see how does that change from the current boundary as compared to the district and what it might look like moving forward. Background information on the project itself. Again, the long-range facilities master plan that was presented to the Board of Education and back in the February of 2024 outlined the key projects that were queued up to be those next in sequence for the next 5 to 10 years as we move forward as a district. Again, you'll be seeing again an updated version of that as we move throughout this year as well, so that we have a chance to be able to recycle, consider different placement, or just keep as placeholders some of the projects that are there. But that really was the impetus behind this replacement school project. The plan did include, at the time that it was presented, a replacement of 2 of our older, smaller schools on the downtown Concord area. And then in February of 25, you can see that construction began on the new Coltrane Webb STEM Elementary School project. It's hard to believe we're 11 months away from actually opening the doors of that particular school. So very exciting. And again, I know this is going to have wonderful opportunities there, but there is some work that needs to take place between now and then to ensure that we properly identify those students who would be attending the school. You can see there I mentioned the target opening date, and this is important to understand too when going through any reboundary effort and trying to create utilization, especially for a new school, keeping in mind the number of students to which that school was intended to serve. There are 750 seats that are actually been identified as part of this elementary school project. However, 756 does not always distribute evenly. All right? We always have to take into account special programming. What are some of our programmatic needs? What are some of these specialized settings we need to just go ahead and consider off the top for student populations that would take advantage of some of the space and some of the design? So we've broken out a little bit to say, this school is equipped to house a pre-K program. Well, pre-K, we're only looking at 18 students in that pre-K classroom. So we have to then take that into consideration and more or less back that out as to what our total student enrollment would be. Also, too, the school itself is being built to support 2 specialized EC settings. That'd be 2 classrooms, so again, we want to take that into consideration. And so when you factor these things in, sometimes the truer number that you're trying to reach may not be that 756, might be closer to that 718 figure that I've represented there that accounts for the K-5 students. So these are things that we will go through the planning phase of, because one of the greatest challenges is that if you open a school that is at 100% utilization day one, it is really, really setting us up for some challenges long term. By the inverse of that, if we open up a school that is 70% utilized, you're now all of a sudden running into a place to which the building is not being utilized as it was intended to. So being able to find that sweet spot really between that 80%, what we're going to try to target for would be a 90% target range, would allow us to have an opportunity to grow into it over time and certainly take advantage of the remaining seats that were there, but also grow comfortably within it. So the project components, I'll touch upon these each briefly and then I'll go into more detail in the accompanying slides. This project itself is going to have various components attached to it. Number one, it always begins with the data. What does the data say? What is the data informing? What are the numbers that you can actually glean from this that help say, okay, these are the factors that need to be taken into consideration? Another project component is going to be the internal review team. That's our district staff that will be taking the lead on a lot of the data analysis and also offering some suggestions and some feedback on some of the programmatic elements, some of the boundary scenarios as we get to that phase of it and the development of those scenarios. We also know that our stakeholders are a key part of this as well. So we want to make sure we give proper attention to our stakeholder engagement and that there are opportunities for the public to be able to interact with us throughout each step and each phase of the project. And then lastly, that leads us to the boundary options themselves, which we would be bringing before the board for approval. So what's included in the data? This right here is not an exhaustive list, but it starts to give you an idea of some of the metrics to which we will include and some of the things that will be informed or part of the actual scenario development process. We want to use the most current data we have, and so here today is day 20 for us. Hard to believe it's gone by that fast in Cabarrus County Schools. But that day 20 number is going to be a first placeholder for us to say, all right, what is happening this year and what trend is developing? We'll then plug that into growth projections. Where do we expect this particular boundary and the boundary that would be under consideration to be 5 years from now? We really want to dive into that 5-year mark. 10 years, it's not as reliable. We'll start to do some forecasting, but the 5 year sets us up for more of a truer representation. Obviously, one of the things we were very aware of and certainly wanted to give attention to throughout this effort was those students who attended the former Beverly Hills Elementary School. There was a commitment made during that process, and Dr. Kapicki has said it himself to say, any student who attended Beverly Hills Elementary School would be given an opportunity to attend the Coltrane Webb STEM Elementary School. We will honor that commitment. Those intentions and invitations will be sent out such that those families have a chance to elect to attend. Just so you know, that would be next year's third graders, fourth graders, and fifth graders. Those would be the students that would qualify under that legacy provision. We want to make sure that we target and market, I guess I should say, to those families. So we'll identify those that are still with us this year who remain in Cabarrus County Schools so that they get an intent form to say, if granted the option, what is your intent? What might you consider? It's non-binding, but it just gives us, again, another data point to say, are there other seats we need to account for as we go through the boundary effort? Historical transfers of students we'll want to take into consideration. Those are your plus minuses in and out over each year. And then our program choice impact. One of the things we know certain has been a hallmark of the culture of Coltrane Webb STEM Elementary School has been the STEM program. So we'll want to give proper attention to what seats need to be set aside for program choice. And I don't mean to sound, sometimes in some efforts, those are afterthoughts. We want to be somewhat upfront when we consider that. So again, when we talk about growing into a school and having certain seats set aside, that number has been identified and designated. And then obviously the metrics from our grading criteria will always be more of the indicators to point us in the direction, are we moving closer to those district averages or farther away from it. This right here gives you a sense of who's going to be part of that internal review team. You can see it as a cross-departmental representation of members from Cabarrus County Schools. Again, we're blessed to have such great individuals in key positions here that are really bright and have a good perspective on all things that go into the school planning process. So we're going to leverage their expertise and their capabilities on this to be able to hear from them what considerations need to be embedded with this as we move forward. The stakeholder engagement piece. We're going to reach out to the community to the best of our ability. It will happen both through direct means, indirect means, and then opportunities for feedback. So with our direct communication, we're going to leverage the vehicles we have right now. Parent Square will be a heavy focus. We will survey individuals such that we have an opportunity to be able to connect to them directly. And we're going to have 2 community engagement sessions. First of which will be September the 17th at R. Brown McAllister Elementary School at 6 p.m. And that session will be dedicated solely to, again, a project kickoff overview process. We want to make sure the community understands, as we want to make sure everyone understands, the factors that will go into this. So they know the process, the why behind, such that when we get to more of the boundary recommendation, then they know what the drivers were there and they can see the work that took place. We'll also have indirect communications, things such as our board meetings we want to take advantage of and certainly have a way to be able to message to the greatest audience possible. We also want to make sure that we use our Engage with CCS page. We found that that was an important tool for us during the last realignment effort. Allows us to be able to streamline and channel communication such that families can communicate directly with us without it really, I guess, getting lost in other channels of communication. So that will be launching tomorrow, and it will be the repository and the place in which we house all of the resources, all presentations, and post all of our key dates associated with the project itself. We also will have online maps available for families that they can use and walk through the process with us and see where they might attend given different scenario options. And then again, we'll have Q&A through the Engage with CCS as well. So we will make a deliberate effort to survey each stakeholder group at the outset. The Board of Education, the internal review team, and then also the community members. We will give the community members a QR code at the community meeting on September 17th so that they can then participate and provide us their thoughts and their feedback on these guiding questions. And you can see we've listed those there. We want to be consistent across each stakeholder group because we recognize there may be variances in how they respond to this. And certainly we understand that. Also, too, it might give us some similarity across the board to say there's consistency with how they're responding, which also would be a powerful indicator as well. But then that feedback will be used to share out with the internal review team, and then we'll also bring aboard the updates on the feedback once we're able to disaggregate it as well, and just share outwardly, here's what folks have said about what matters to them, what's important, and how they, what concerns they have. And then finally, the boundary option criteria, just so you know, these will be the factors that go into the determination and the scenarios that would be developed. Capacity utilization, feeder patterns, proximity, and then lastly, those demographics as well. This gives you a calendaring of what might be the timeline that we have associated right now with the project. And as you can see, we will be bringing to the board an update each and every month leading into the recommendations themselves. The enrollment and criteria data processing is ongoing throughout the project. We'll be collecting information as it comes in and certainly monitoring current trends that are out there. And then you can see the internal review team has a total of 6 meetings that will be held between now and the 1st of December. Our community meetings, I've already mentioned the first one on September the 17th, and then we'll be advertising once we land on this the second date of the November meeting. The November meeting we do anticipate going back before the community and once again being able to share the option or options developed at that time with them and answering any questions they may have about those options. And then you see there at the tail end of it, we would be bringing, we hope, a boundary recommendation to the board tail end of November, which would then allow for public comment and then final approval in the month of December. And it's important to note that December date because one of the things that we mindful of throughout this is our program choice window closes December 15th. So an opportunity to be able to communicate and to be able to share and approve a boundary prior to that would certainly position families to then make decisions about program choice considerations moving forward. So with that, I will pause and certainly entertain any questions you may have.
Okay, board members? Greg?
The EC classrooms that we have planned, do we know what programs are going there?
I don't know that we do at this point. I don't want to speak for Dr. Roth, but Dr. Roth and her team are part of the internal review team, and that will be part of the conversation taking place. That's a great question.
Do you think that would be relieving programs at other schools or planning for trends showing growth in certain EC populations?
Okay, Dr. Capicchi would like to answer that.
Yeah, I think great question, and kind of what we do every year is we assess that at the end of the school year and see where the population is being drawn from and try and place those regionalized programs in the best, I guess, geographical locations, best way to put it. So depending on what the trend is, we'll try and meet the demand that way. So as the school is built, I'll sit with Dr. Roth and Dr. Bowers and obviously Angela Fitzwater and assess kind of where our kids are and where the best locations would be.
And then the other question, we're talking about stakeholder engagement. We have good channels to reach out to the kids and the families that are already involved in our school system.
Yes, sir.
I think we brought this up in our 2x2s about this, but is there a possibility we reach out to the city of Concord and be able to cast the net a little broader to hit maybe people who will have kindergartners in the next year or two, or maybe able to utilize that pre-K program?
Yes, sir. That's something we definitely would take in consideration. We wanted to make sure we targeted our current students first, as you shared. So we were able to, last week, with the head systems of our communications team, which has been great, we were able to target the families at each of not only Coltrane Webb, but some of the surrounding area boundaries, which again, just in the spirit of saying, hey, you may want to come out and just learn about this. The degree to which they would be impacted remains to be seen. We also wanted to be intentional about targeting our former Beverly Hills families as well. So they also received a direct communication. And then the last piece of that would be working with the city of Concord to be able to say, can they use some of their internal communication platforms to target those in the immediate and surrounding area as well.
Great, thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Melanie?
Do you have an approximation of how many legacy students the invite will go out to, so you know how many? I'm sure you will know, but so
Yes, ma'am.
people can know how many seats this is actually going to open up beyond the legacy students.
Great question. Yes, ma'am. So I can tell you this for certainty. At the end of the 24-25 school year, we did a brief capture on how many students were still with us that attended Beverly Hills in kindergarten, first or second grade. And that number was 154 at that time. So what we'll do now, after the 20th day number has passed, we will go back and do another analysis and say, of those students who might still be with us this school year, and then that number will then give us what would be a first hard count as to what we might expect. It stands to reason that there will be some of those students who would be naturally included in the boundary itself, because again, if you look at the maps and go back to what we pointed out, there's a portion of the former Beverly Hills boundary that would be included in this boundary expansion effort. So we will continue to monitor that and certainly use those numbers to identify what seats need to be considered.
Would this also impact the program choice numbers? that come in from outside the district? Because right now that contributed to a lot of the Beverly Hills people, correct?
Yes, so there would be program choice seats set aside for those students who attend from outside of the boundary, and I think it's a great point you bring up. So we want to be intentional about that up front, such that, again, we don't go back to the numbers I shared, 718 students that are K-5 in there, and then we get to that number and say, oh gosh, we didn't really consider program choice from outside the boundary. That'll have to be something we work in lockstep with, and Ms. Reeves and her team will be with us as well through every step along the way to be able to monitor that and certainly inform on that. Yes, ma'am.
Pam?
Am I correct in thinking that the program choice number right now, because the kids are not at Culture and Web, that number has decreased this year, but you're anticipating once the new schools open up that the interest will come back?
I don't want to certainly say with certainty yes or no, but that is reasonable to suggest if we look at what has been the historical trend data of program choice over the time. The other thing we know about program choice too, as it is and currently at the swing school, we had fewer seats. Some of that also is a factor. So, speaking to say what may or may not have contributed, I think we look at more than just 1 year. We're going to look at the historical trend and what might be an appropriate number to say, let's be conscientious of this and set this aside. And as I speak to that, continue to grow into the building itself.
And just for parents listening, we have 2 STEM elementary schools that are program choice.
I'm going to defer to Ms. Reeves for the official answer.
Dr. Kopicki, you want to answer that?
I know we have schools that are, the whole school is, but I'm saying program choice, meaning that if you can live outside the boundaries and attend that school.
Yeah. I know it's Roberta Road, or Brown McAllister, Coltrane Web.
We'll get an answer directly from Ms. Reeves.
So we have 3 elementary schools that take magnet students or students outside of their zone for STEM programming. We do also have a STEM school that takes in zone and no magnet students, but we'll be sharing more updates with you regarding the annual plan shortly.
All right, on this side. Catherine?
I'm just glad to hear that we are going to honor the commitment that we made to the Beverly Hills families. Could this possibly involve any families that was part of the redistricting last year to be redistricted again?
Again, is it possible? The answer is yes.
So that was actually one of my concerns, is moving kids twice, but
Yes, sir.
but this isn't really, I don't see it as a very large redistricting, because we've had up to 500 kids in the past at Culture and Web, and if that grows again, it doesn't leave you a whole lot of extra seats for expanding your boundary. But
Yes, sir.
in any event, if you're at a school that's adjacent to Culture and Web, you should pay attention to what this process is. If you're on the other side of the county, it's very unlikely it's going to, other than maybe give a couple extra program choice seats for some people.
That's right.
So I got one email today regarding the former Beverly Hills families. Are we doing anything at the school as far as naming it after Beverly Hills? Are we letting the legacy die? Or what are we doing for the memory of the school? And Dr. Becky, if you want to answer that one.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify the STEM situation too. I want to make the board understand some of our STEM schools are designated STEM schools, some of them are not magnet schools. So you have our Brown McAllister and Coltrane Webb, which are the magnet schools. Patriots is a school STEM school, so it doesn't draw. I didn't want to seem confused, but I just want to make sure I understood the question. In terms of name, that'll be a board decision. It's up to the board. Our recommendation will be to keep the name Coltrane Webb at Coltrane Webb site. There is some, and we'll give the board more updates in this as we get closer to it. There is some historical context to work from, and what the board has done when new schools come on board and replace schools on site. They tend to keep the name. So we'll make our recommendation. We do not plan on changing Coltrane Webb, but we also want to include the Beverly Hills name on the site that the Mary Frances Wall School is going as well. So we're having those conversations internally, and we come up with the final recommendations. We'll bring those to the board. It'll be ultimately a board decision, though.
Okay, well, the community is interested, so please let's
Yes, sir.
share what we know. I did have another question, but I've now slipped my mind, so we'll let it go. But, appreciate the presentation. I guess our goal, again, is to make sure we have this done by the opportunity for students to enroll in this program choice, and also to give them enough advance notice that next year, because we do intend to open it next year,
That's
school
right.
year, so give the students that will be going to that school a good at least 6 to 8 months a heads up that they'll be going there.
Most definitely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And you don't go anywhere, right? So
I'm still here.
you are on the next item, so that we are up to 5.04, which is school improvement plan process, and you'll be joined back by Ms. Sarah Reeves again.
Well, good evening once again, everyone. So it certainly is my pleasure to share with you tonight really some exciting work. I think this really dovetails nicely off the work that presentation that Mr. Singh had earlier in really speaking about just the gains, and quite honestly, in some areas, some historic gains. I think we can say that with confidence, that the district has achieved. And one thing I'll leave with it, that doesn't happen by accident. Dr. Kapicki went to great lengths to really illustrate it's our educators really that play a key role in what takes place at the school level, and certainly student achievement and student outcomes. But I do believe too, operating against that backdrop, it's a framework. And one of the things I would certainly offer is that the collective. I've had an opportunity to work in several districts over my career, and one of the things I certainly cherish the most about Cabarrus County Schools is it's just the willingness of all to be committed to what we see as the cause. And it's really finding ways to do whatever it takes for the benefit of students. We should not take that for granted. That is certainly something that is sets us apart, if I may say, but it's also just shows that there's a synergy when it comes to really leveraging the capabilities of individuals across a lot of departments. And so for the last 3 years, we have worked to be able to enhance and certainly, I would say, refine our continuous improvement framework. And that's not to suggest there wasn't one in place, and so please, I don't want to certainly insinuate that that was the case. But as with all things, continuous improvement is saying, how can we be better tomorrow? Each and every day. Are we better tomorrow than we were the day before? And to that end, we have a chance to really stand and champion and celebrate these wonderful achievements and the accomplishments of really the tireless efforts of our families, our students, our staff, and all that's involved. We also owe it to them to say, this is how we're going to task ourselves to be better, and where can we grow, and what opportunities lie ahead. So this is really grounded within that structure and that framework. It's the school improvement planning model. In our schools, I'm just so impressed with how hard they work and how committed they are to what really is the goal setting, because that's where it starts. If you don't have goals, you don't know what you're chasing. You don't know what you're actually trying to achieve. And so through their intentional efforts and really what has begun an absolute year-round model, they've been able to really, again, capitalize upon a lot of the planning, the resources, really the data that's available to them, and then the talent that's within the building to be able to pull this off. Tonight is really just a microcosm of that, to really set the stage for what we will be bringing before you in October, and that would be the school improvement plans for the 25-26 school year, for you to approve them for our schools. So this just again revisits some of the process, some of the things you've seen before, but you've seen it before because this is part of what we do. And it's ongoing, it's familiar, and it's something that really, again, is starting to set what we believe is it is truly a culture of continuous improvement, one that is striving to be even better than they were before. So a bit of an overview as to what we're here to share tonight, and certainly some of the things that which we'll touch upon throughout the presentation. So really when we talk about it, you may have seen this graphic, we're moving from this to this. And I might even suggest we have moved from compliance to making it better, because we know what matters and we know the stakes are high. because again, we have students that are depending on us and counting on us. And so when we look at it, we have to think, how does this then fit within context? Are we aligned? Because if not, then you have incongruence, you have confusion, you have ambiguity. But we start with those standards and those priorities that are set forth by the state of North Carolina. That comes through very clearly. Their strategic priorities and then a portrait of a graduate. And then that then falls down to the district to say, have we aligned our strategic priorities with those set forth by the state? And then ultimately at the school level, how does their vision, how does their mission, how does their identity align with that? And then what are those goals that are going to be able to support the advancement of those strategic priorities? So for us, look no further than State Board of Education strategic priorities. The state has released, if you haven't seen this yet, their new pillars for what will be driving their strategic plan. And the language may change between what the state puts forth, between what the district adopts and what the schools have, but the spirit and the context of it remains the same. It's a focus on teaching and learning. Someone made mention of the graduation rate earlier, and really what that is, how representative that is of giving students opportunities. You see, creating opportunities and pathways for students beyond high school. That's what we're here to really pave the way for. Being able to focus and celebrate our educators. You see that highlighted in the state's Board of Education strategic priorities. You see maximizing, leveraging operational resources. A lot of things that we have found in our very own strategic plan are mirrored here. So that's when you know you're aligned. You're matching those things that the state has set as priority, and it's playing out within your district as well. And so we would look at our schools, our very own strategic plan, 5 strategic priorities. Doesn't have to match the 8 that the state does, but again, the spirit and the language is the same. Focusing on educators, making sure that we recruit, we retain, we celebrate. Teaching and learning is at the very core of what we're doing. Operational performance and excellence, we want to continue to maintain that. Student wellness, we know how much that factors into the performance of a student and actually the connection that students have with schools. Without our wraparound support specialists out there doing great work every single day, you don't have kids that are connected to schools, they don't have a sense of belonging and what purpose is there in coming. These are the things that we'll continue to hone and to continue to improve upon. But the foundation is oh so strong. And then when we think about this now, our continuous improvement framework. And I think it speaks to the very essence of, are we getting better? Are we improving? School improvement planning is not a develop the plan, submit it to the board, and now all of a sudden approval, we're set. No, it's revision. It's constantly playing out. And Ms. Reeves is going to share with you some of the things that the district and her team have really efforted and championed that have been intentional, have been targeted, and I believe give us the greatest opportunity to move the needle for all learners.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Bowers. As Mr. Sane alluded to previously, we are certainly not in the business of maintaining anything. It's about continuous improvement. And so we actually were already onto this before our data was released. And so in June, when we hosted our summer leadership conference with our administrators, while we certainly didn't know where we ranked in terms of state level data, we knew where the growth opportunities were for us, and we had heard boots on the ground from staff, from administrators, where our focus areas needed to be. And so for the last 2 years, we've been really intentional around building this collective efficacy around district goals. So as opposed to every school having a different teaching and learning focus, we really wanted to make sure that we had a concentrated effort in specific district areas of improvement that we wanted to see move the needle forward. And where very candidly, we can make some hard decisions around funding allocations and human resources, because the reality is we do have to make some of those more difficult decisions. And if we have our North Star around district school improvement planning, it makes it a little bit easier. So this year, just as in years past, we launched our goals around student wellness. So every single one of our schools has a goal in student wellness. They also have a goal in teaching and learning. For our elementary schools, that's specifically around foundational literacy. And we're measuring that against third grade reading scores this year. So in the past, we looked at Dibbles and a couple of other data sets. We know we want to be better in third grade EOG results, as you saw in Mr. Sain's presentation. So that's what we're going to be measuring against this year. But we know the backdrop to that starts in pre-K and in kindergarten and leads all the way to the end of year of third grade. Additionally, in middle school, we're going to continue the focus in 8th grade math because we're still not there yet, and we want to make sure that we're intentionally provisioning and paying attention to that area. And then in high school, we're continuing with Math 1, but as Mr. Sain alluded to, we are actually adding on the ACT and work keys because that really is our true measure of are our students ready for post-secondary, whether it's to enlist, enroll, or become employed. That gives us a great data set and a great data measure to benchmark against. Additionally, if schools receive an ATSI designation status from the state, they would have a support goal in alignment to that. So that would be specifically around a subgroup data set. And then last but not least, we do want schools to have some autonomy. And so if there is another area of focus that they feel like they need to specifically highlight in terms of school improvement planning, they have the ability to do so. And so we talked about that being the school choice goal. And so the last couple of weeks we've had our schools come in and present on their school improvement plan goals, not only from last year but this year, and really speaking to what drives and motivates that is a lot of the school improvement team talking about what they see boots on the ground every day, and they do a SWOT analysis or strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to determine where might be the best place to focus our efforts this year. So when we talk about district supports, we consistently think about it in 3 buckets. The first is provisioning high quality, guaranteed, viable curriculum that is research-based and able to produce evidence-based data sets for students to be able to back and support what we know is best for kids. Secondly, we talk about professional development because it's not enough to just have a guaranteed curriculum. You have to have professional development to support our teachers in terms of the execution. But then, as Mr. Sain alluded to earlier, we're constantly doing things with data to adapt to meet the needs of the students that we serve. And then last but not least, it's really that one-on-one school level support. And that is where we really get down to scaffolded differentiated support. Every one of our schools is incredibly unique and diverse in a multitude of ways. And so being able to work with the school administration to say, what does your data say? What do you need? And how can we best support you? And so I'm not going to read off of this list, but I do think it's important to capture it because there's very intentional alignment happening across the district, and very candidly, a large amount of fiscal resources that are going into addressing some of these opportunities for continuous improvement as it relates to teaching and learning goals. The first and foremost, I'd be remiss not to mention the adoption of arts and letters, our ELA curriculum. That is going to be a huge piece in moving the needle forward, specifically in providing rigorous instruction for our students, which we ultimately want to see play out as we look at third grade, end of grade test scores. Additionally, obviously, there's some things that I just would point out that we've been doing for several years, but it's important to name because they are incredibly imperative when we're talking about ensuring that students are at proficiency at the end of third grade, specifically the science of reading and the letters training being one of them, the implementation specifically of utilizing our data structures such as our benchmarks and Mastery Connect. So some of these things are not new, but we also know we are seeing results. So we want to stick with them and consistently adjust and tweak versus adding a bunch of new things in for our schools, but keeping with what works and tweaking and modify where we see is needed. The other big piece that I would highlight is that we're continuing to refine our instructional resources specifically as it relates to tiered support. So for those students that may be significantly off grade level and in the MTSS process, we're using an evidence-based curriculum 95 wrap, which is really supporting with some of those skills outside of core instruction, which is making significant difference for our students. Excuse me, in terms of middle school focus, we are continuing with the guaranteed curriculum in 8th grade. This year, we're actually leveraging 7th grade as well. So we're going to continue to add down until we can ensure that every teacher has guaranteed viable curriculum in their hands so that they can be making those decisions around data and how to adapt curriculum versus what am I going to teach tomorrow and what does that look like. strengthening our math intervention and really leveraging tools and products like iReady to be able to use that secondary data set to determine what potentially off-grade level skills do I need to target for this student in addition to core instruction. And then, of course, continuing with collective ownership. So using our teachers to be the voice and the sounding board of what is working and what do we need to modify and adjust as it relates to curriculum or the instructional tools and resources purchased at the district level. And then, of course, in high school, as we're talking about specifically Math 1 and ACT and Work Keys, we're going to continue doing a lot of the things that we have been doing because we are continuing to increase in proficiency and rank, but we are making some adjustments and tweaks along the way as we're hearing from school teachers and leaders around what they feel like might be worthwhile. One of the things that we're really excited about is actually hosting some curriculum feedback sessions from some of our really amazing teachers across the county. What worked this semester? What didn't work? Where do you feel like we need to tweak and go back? Did that assessment meet the rigor and the commands of the EOC? Do we need to adjust? Those are the types of conversations, very candidly, where you had that two-way dialogue that you have the most successful curriculum implementations, but also it gives us a much broader scope of what's happening boots on the ground day in and day out, because while we can walk classrooms, we're not going to see what happens every day in a classroom, but a teacher will be able to tell us what lessons really hit the target goal and where we might need to go back and adjust and modify. And then, as I shared, specifically talking about strategic school support. So we have the opportunity to meet with every single one of our schools at the beginning of the year to review their end of year data, but really these are great conversations to be able to hear the story behind the data. What were your threats? Where did you feel like there were challenges that might have kept you from meeting your school improvement plan goals? Or how do you believe you met your school improvement plan goals so that we can replicate promising practices across the county? Additionally, we'll be out in schools hosting what we call continuous school improvement walks. So being able to monitor where do we need to continue to improve, but also what's working well, and being able to give schools systematic feedback around promising practices and being able to move that data. And last but not least, I would say really looking specifically at the benchmark data of the school. So when we talk about those walkthroughs, having the conversation triangulated with where is your school currently as it relates to projected proficiency, and what might you want to consider in order to reach your end target by the end of the year.
So as I mentioned earlier, this work didn't start August the 11th when kids showed up, nor will it end when the board approves school improvement plans for this year. This is a continuous ongoing process, which makes it unique and really certainly fulfills the effort and the spirit of what school improvement planning should look like. During the summer, you've heard us talk about summer leadership. Many of you had an opportunity to attend. That really sets in motion, celebrate where we have come from, but also look to the horizon as to where we can go. And that becomes the first moment in which we can really have our teams sit down with protected time and their members of their school improvement teams and start mapping out a destination for the upcoming year. It truly is remarkable to think that we're on the heels of closing out one year, and yet our teams are already chomping at the bit to show up and say, let's go ahead, let's set this course in motion for the next year as well. And again, it takes a lot to be able to turn that around in a short timeline and give the schools with the appropriate data, the resources, and the information needed so that they can certainly perform yeoman's work there. So again, our academics team, our student services team, our accountability teams, and so many others, they work tirelessly to close out to be able to start up when it begins at summer leadership. And then that process continues in the fall. This week, schools will be finalizing their plans and have those voted on at the school level. They then will be submitting those plans for review on Friday of this week. And then we will certainly prepare those reports, share them with the board in advance so you have a little time to familiarize yourself with them before we bring them back to you in October for your consideration. Then upon approval, it continues the process throughout. Continue to revise, continue to revisit, continue to monitor, and continue to say what supports are we needed and are we moving towards our intended target. Don't wait till the end of the year to find out, and our schools are so good at being able to have predictive measures in place to say, are we trending in the right direction? And if not, what will we do different? So that sets really the backdrop and the timeline that we have in place, and certainly that which is occurring. And with that, we'll certainly pause and entertain any questions you may have.
Okay, board members, questions? Pam?
I just want to say thank you. I feel like everything's connected tonight as far as all the presentations are concerned. And I just want to say thank you to communications for the slides with the pictures, because it sounds so simple, but what we do, and this is what I'm so impressed by, is that you're talking data, you're talking numbers, but we don't forget the human element to all this. And you can't be successful unless you put kids first. And so what all the success tonight and what these plans are doing is, how do we get our kids to be better off than they are right now? And so I really appreciate, I recognize that we're data driven and we're holding people to account, and that's our job. And so I want to say thank you. I know this is a lot of work, and the leadership teams at each of the schools are working so hard. So you get to brag on them, you get to get the credit in front of us, but remember, there's so many people who've been working, they gave up their summer, they're working now, and so I appreciate that. I will say for my fellow board members who haven't been here, when we get this, it's a lot of stuff to go through, the spreadsheets and each of the schools, but I appreciate the attention to detail, and more importantly, how we get down to the person that matters, which is our students. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Pam. Greg?
So it seems like the word of tonight is success. I want to know, when we're doing these school improvement plans, how are we capturing successes at schools that are succeeding now? Because arts and letters is no part of the success that we saw in this last year. So how are we carefully capturing that success and making sure we're not supplanting it just because we have a new program?
It's a great question. I'm going to start, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Reeves for a little bit more detailed analysis and answer. One of the first things that we have introduced, because again, Mr. Walter, you asked this question a couple of years ago when I had the opportunity to stand here and present before the board. It's, how are we reviewing the goals at the end of the year? And I thought it was a very, very well-pointed question. Because if we're not measuring what we're doing, do we close the book on it, and then all of a sudden that ship has sailed, move on, and don't really learn from some of our past efforts? I can tell you this year, through the help, our assistant superintendents are wonderful. They do a great job of being able to tracking data across levels and be able to inform some of the measurements and the progress. So they have sought it upon themselves to be able to say, let's start collecting this. Let's use it to inform our conversation. Last year in Cabarrus County schools, across all of our schools that submitted school improvement plans, we had a total of 141 goals that were identified across all schools, K-12. Of those 141 goals that were actually named, we had 114 of those that showed significant progress or met the goal itself. That's 82% of those goals which were identified. Now, we got a long way to go to be at that 100%, because that's what we want to hang our hat on. And the why behind it is the student, and getting down to the student level and the student detail to understand how can we best serve. But to be able to put that in perspective is just, again, it champions the efforts of everything that's taking place, which you've heard from tonight. So again, we'll continue to monitor that. We have a baseline in motion now, which we can operate and work from. And I thank you, Mr. Walter, for building that, because it has helped us be better. And that's the type of cooperative partnership we certainly hope to have with our board.
It goes back to your slide from moving from compliance to how
Yes,
can we
sir.
do better.
So well. So I hope that answers that part, and I'll let you.
I would just say, adding on to what Dr. Bauer said, I think our leveled assistant superintendents do a remarkable job of highlighting promising practices that are happening. One of the things I think in public education is we're so busy moving on to the next thing that we don't stop and pause and say, what's already working, and let's keep that thing in place. The other thing that I've really enjoyed is, as I've shared, we have meetings with every one of our schools at the beginning of the year. So we're having intentional dialogue with those schools that did meet their goals. why do you think you met your goal? What do you think attributed to your success? And we're trying to capture that so that we can distill it down in a digestible format so that schools can cross-collaborate with one another. So what were the common themes that we heard amongst all of our schools that met their goal in this specific area? And then, if there's some things systematically that we can do better as a district, we're also having that conversation as well in terms of being able to try to make sure that it's more replicable across all of our schools. But again, I think a lot of it is just collaboration, and our leveled assistant superintendent is doing a really fantastic job of allowing schools to spotlight what's working well.
Thank you for that. I really look forward as we get deeper into these numbers and we really dig in to see if there are things that are transferable from schools that are succeeding to some of the schools that are not performing as well, because the disparity between those low performing schools and those high performing schools can be like 50 points. It's huge. And so I really want to see how we can move those results to those other schools. So thank you.
And we'll have it on our planning agenda to go through some of that. Anybody on this side? Oops. Shannon and then Sam.
I was a school improvement chair several times in my career, and last time I think was like
Bless
5
you
years
for that, by the way. That's it.
Last time was 5 years ago, I think, right before I retired, and seems like you guys have got this down to a science by this point. So just the data digs and all that, it's an excellent job. And I'm just curious, Ms. Reeves, at one point, so you're going to focus on Math 1. At one point, I know there was some discussion about the Math 3 and maybe changing that to an optional choice for high school. Was that still in discussion?
It is. That would be up to the General Assembly. We're tracking that legislation very, very closely, but that is yet to be determined, but it is still in conversation to my knowledge. Great question.
Okay, Sam.
So the teaching and learning goal is pretty prescribed. The student wellness goal, is that a school-driven goal? Okay, so
Through the panorama survey, the student wellness survey data, they can use that to.
I see. But what I hear is that there's school flexibility on how they meet that goal.
Yes.
Okay, all right, very good. And then the
We
school
repeat
choice.
repeat for the audience what Dr. Roth just said. They just can't hear you over there.
Yes, the student wellness goal, they are able to have the autonomy to choose what aspect they want to address. Typically, they will use the information from the student wellness survey. So it might be sense of belonging, it might be emotional regulation. They can choose which area they want to focus on.
Thank you, Sam.
Good. And then I guess I'm just trying to see how much is being told to them versus how much they are. So the student wellness goal sounds like a lot of flexibility, but it's going to be tested through the panorama,
Right.
or not
They can
measured.
It's measurable through that.
Right. And it sounds like our system has a prescribed goal, and then the school choice sounds pretty wide open. Okay, very good. Thank you.
You got another one,
I
Sharon?
got one more thing I forgot. So last week we had our first school visits of the school year. Went to 2 elementary schools, and I saw the consumables that they had from the new Arts and Letters program, and they were wonderful, weren't they? So yeah, thank y'all for that.
Thank you. That was a large fiscal investment, so we are greatly appreciative.
Madison, you want to add anything to the discussion on your experience?
I just know that all of the school improvement teams worked really, really hard over the summer. So I think that it's important to note that, and that I can speak for my school, but everybody who is a part of that is very, very dedicated to making sure that we are meeting the needs of the students that are currently in our building. So thank you to everybody who's on the school improvement team, because it is a large commitment and it is a really, really important committee to have at school.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, thank you very much. So the next one is 5.05. This comes out of our Finance Committee meeting. So we're bringing up back Mr. Penn to go through the new financial exhibit overview to see if that's something that we'd like to see continue.
Good evening again, everybody. Appreciate the opportunity to present this. I think this is something like the third iteration of how we refined financial reporting in my tenure here. And this one grew out of a specific request coming out of the Finance Committee around just more transparent reporting, a little more level of detail, not to the point that you get so lost in the numbers you can't tell the difference anymore, what you're looking at. But this is one where we're looking specifically at Fund 2. That's our local operating expense. It's the one I probably pay the most attention to, right? Because it's the one where it ties into our fund balance, it ties into our safety net versus all the other funding sources that we have, right? And it's probably the one we manage, I would say, probably the most closely. It's about 450 lines in this report. So for the next 90 minutes or so, I'll take you through the line item detail of what's in there. No, I'm kidding. But just so you get a sense of how to look at this, the top section is revenues that we receive, right? And all the different pieces, the way we receive from the county. Deferred revenue would just mean revenue that came over from the year before. Fines and forfeitures, we talked a lot about fines and forfeitures last year. And then, the different pieces as they come through. And looking at, okay, our total budget for revenue for Fund 2, if you added up everything, is just a little bit over $112 million. And the way to look at this is, okay, through August 31st, which is the date I made this report run for, we had taken in 18.7 million. So the county gives us a piece every month, and we get in various pieces as they come in that feeds into this number, which means, well, there's no purchase orders for revenue, but unencumbered balance in this case means we're waiting on another 93 million to come into this budget source, right? As you then start moving through this, you'll see that there are different pieces, and they kind of go category by category. The first sets, object codes, and the ones are generally salary and compensation related items. When you get into the twos, you'll start seeing things that are really more around, and there's a lot of ones because it breaks down in a lot of different places. And if we could pause right there for a second on, I'll use myself as an example. Keep in mind that what you're going to see here is only the piece that ties to local. I do make more than $11,000 a year, I'm happy to report to you, right? So, but it's only the piece that's in local here. There's a big piece that sits in state as well because we're able to do it that way. One of the things that was raised as a question, Ms. Freeman, you actually have this question, is there a way that we can capture the number of people that are tied to these things? It moves around a lot during the year, but what I could probably do is put a stake in the ground to say how many were budgeted as we started the year in each of these categories. I think we can probably land on that. So I'll probably try to incorporate that into the next iteration of this. As you keep going down, then you're going to get into things that talk about, keep scrolling. We'll get into the twos after that. And that's going to be anything that's related to your benefits. So you'll have Social Security, you'll have hospitalization, you'll have all the retirement costs that'll float in there. And then we get into things, right? So you're going to get into your contracted services. And one of the things that's nice about doing it by object code and the way we presented it here is you can see all the various departments that tie into those things, right? So you could see the specific budgets that were tied into each of those departments and how we're spending that money. And naturally, as we start getting into the school year, we'll start encumbering a lot of those things on purchase orders and actually start expending them as the year goes on. And we could keep sliding down if you don't mind. We get into things like reproduction costs. Okay, how much do we spend on copiers, right? How is that budgeted within the system? We get into all of our utility costs that are sitting in Fund 2. We can get into all the travel reimbursements and the professional development costs that are out there. Keep scrolling down into mobile communications and how does that break out? There's a big piece that sits in transportation, and it looks like it's an outsized number. So one of the things I'm always cautious about, numbers on a page don't tell a story, right? You always got to be careful about that. When you think about that's a mobile communication device that's actually tied to a bus, right? But it flows through there because that's how we track it in mobile communications, right? It's not like, the drivers don't have 9 different cell phones that they're all carrying, right? This is actually something that ties to a specific vehicle that's going around. We get into different things that as we keep scrolling on down. All the supplies and materials that we have, a lot of different pieces, the big pieces that are in there are the ones that go out to the schools, but all the departments, and that's everything from, copy paper to, the pens and paper that we use and the things that just make the place go, right? Keep sliding on down. And again, I'm not going to go through every single line item on here, but you'll see how all the repairs that we have tie out to this. You'll see how all the things in transportation tie out to here. All the furniture and other equipment that we buy throughout the year. You'll see the leases that we have for the computers, and the very last item on here is the amount that transfers out to the charter schools. Remember, we're just a pass-through. Basically, we receive the money from the county, and then we allocate it out to all the charter schools. And again, you'll see at the very bottom, 112 million ties to exactly the same number at the top for the revenue, which is good. That's what you want to see. We've spent a total of 16 million so far. We've got purchase orders outstanding of a little over 7.3. The unencumbered balance in expenses is 88.6. And this isn't something you need to vote on every month. It's just the budget amendments that actually require a formal vote. But this is kind of an way of augmenting the reporting that we're already doing. My reporting up until this point really has been more focused on variance analysis. So this isn't going to get you down to like an invoice level detail, but at least you get to see how the parts come together. And this is actually kind of supports why it's the outcome of the 60 budget meetings that we do throughout the annual cycle, meeting with schools and meeting with departments to make sure all these different needs are tracked, right? And then making sure that, you know, it was a one-time expense, does it get to go away? But how do we make sure that we're addressing all the needs that, frankly, underpin everything we talked about in the first couple of hours tonight, right? Is that there's things that make the district go. Finances are a piece of it, but this is, again, intended to be responsive to a request from the board and the finance committee to say, can you give us a little bit more than you have in the past? So happy to take feedback on the exhibit.
Thank you, Mr. Penn. Board members, feedback? Melanie?
I want to thank you for this. I think it does speak to transparency so that anybody can look on and see what their school board spends money on. And I appreciate your work for this. We are not Little House on the Prairie anymore, schools. So I think a lot of people are thinking, what are all these meetings about? And you see that there's a whole lot that goes into this, and I am so glad you understand it all. Thank you very much. So, thank you. Thank you for your work.
Melanie, anybody else? Sam?
So how are the county appropriations, are they like monthly
Yes.
drawdowns? Okay.
That's right.
All right.
That's right. If you look at the annual amount in the budget, you should see about 1/12 of it hit every month, right? Although, to be blunt, we actually had a conversation with them recently about overfunding in the month of November and underfunding in the month of December, so that the 2 months balance out to the same. Because the cash flow that we have to pay stipends out in the certified supplements, I should say, in November. So we try to manage our cash flow that way a little bit better. Yeah. Okay.
Shannon?
Thank you for this. It actually helps me have a better understanding of everything that goes on in the school system. If you would clarify this or make sure I'm right, so the money we send to the charter schools, the 7.5 million.
Yep.
If a child comes back to our system, we don't get the money back.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, now it may not be in there. Now we pay out monthly. We don't pay out annually to the charters, right? So if they're in their say September and October numbers, we'll pay them for that. They come back to us, that's great, but we don't get a refund on September or October.
I think that was really surprising for me to learn that when I got on this board, so thank you.
Sure.
So I've been on the board a long time, and this is about the best detail I've ever seen. Typically, if we wanted this information, we had to ask for it, but we had to know how to ask for it. So
Had to ask the right person, perhaps. But yeah,
Thank
no, I'm glad this works for you, because again, I know this stuff inside out, right? And I don't mean to mean it in an arrogant way. It's just what I live and breathe as a profession. But I want to make sure that you folks get to use it as a management tool, because that's your responsibility as board members. But then as you're getting questions now from the public about how do we spend our money, you're going to have this armament with you to say, here's the level of detail that we see. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Penn.
Great. Thank you.
Oh, Greg's got one.
This will come up in a later report, but Medicaid revenue isn't in, this is all local, so that's why
This
the
is local
Medicaid
too.
revenue isn't
So Medicaid comes in our special revenue, Fund 8.
here. Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. We have not collected anything to speak of this year, just to answer your question. Yeah.
Okay, Melanie's got one more comment.
All of this is on board docs for anybody to
Sure.
see.
Yeah,
So any parent, any stakeholder can go in and look at what we're seeing.
absolutely.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Mr. Penn.
Thank you.
All right, we've been sitting for 2 hours. Is anybody open for maybe a 5 or 10 minute recess? I'd need a motion in a second. Did I get a motion? All right, and a second. All in favor of a 5 to 10 minute recess, please say aye. Aye. Okay, we'll take a short break and we'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, we're back after a short recess, so stretch the legs a little bit after our discussions on our presentations. So we will move on again to items, or section 6, which is items for consent or action for next week. So these are items that if we all agree and want to add it to the consent agenda, we'll do that. If we want to have a vote, we need to ask for it to be put on action. So got a few of these items to go. We'll start with 6.01, which is our policies for first read. And I've got Gordon Palmer this month to come talk to us about these policies, so welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Walter, Dr. Kapicki, members of the board. I'm here to present several policies for first read, and the first 5 are all surrounding DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion. The executive branch, primarily through the Department of Education, took actions to eliminate or restrict DEI in schools. There was a potential loss of federal funding if not in compliance. So based on that information, the policy committee started reviewing policies where it exists to make sure that we are in compliance. So the first policy would be 4150, school assignment transfers and program choice enrollment. With this, as you can see in the notes, we took out related language, socioeconomic diversity, diverse, and geographical features. In addition to those, while we were reviewing this policy, we also reviewed the entire policy to say, are any of the practices outdated? So we did make a couple of adjustments, as you can see in the red line edits, where we took out a balanced calendar because that is not something we're utilizing anymore. And we also cleaned up the timeline for requests for reassignment. Instead of just saying a deadline of, I believe, April 1st, we kind of said we have a window from February 1st to April 1st. So just minor edits where we're cleaning that up. I'll go through the first 5 policies, and then if you have any questions on those sections, I'll take some questions. Policy 4303, fair and consistent discipline. We removed language equitable and took out a statement paragraph that had that language in it. In policy 5010, parent organizations, we took out section 4 of section B4, and I think there may have been an edit in there that we need to go back to the policy committee, because after section B subsection 4, there's a paragraph that mentions where we can approve or not approve parent organizations, or if there's a small group of students that it would serve, we could have a district group. I believe we should have only struck out section 4 and not the paragraph afterwards, so we can bring that back to our policy committee just to make that edit clear.
Is that the intent, or is that just any one of us could take that off?
Yeah.
Without having to go back and come back as first.
Absolutely,
first
yeah.
read, but that's up to the board here.
Yep. When I was reviewing the edits, I just saw that and wanted to make that known, which you guys can, we're at the leisure of the board for that. Policy 7100, recruitment and selection of personnel. We removed DEI related language, diversity and diverse, which was a section that said that we were committed to diversity. And policy 4240-7312, child abuse related threats to safety. And this, in the notes, it should say section E instead of section D. So section E, it basically rephrases how we need to report to the State Board of Education for certain misconduct, basically just rephrasing that to the most recent legislation. And then section I, instead of section H, adds a new statutory requirement that started where we have to show videos the first 5 days of school, which we have done that, and we communicated that thoroughly this year. Any other legal references are required, and then there's a cross-reference which is recommended. So those are the DEI policies. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Okay, board members, question, Pam.
I'm disappointed about the diversity stuff. So I guess I'm trying to understand what was the conversation that led to this. I understand we have to say things, and I'll just use the example of the lunch stuff that we talk about all the time. I mean, federal guidelines, that's what we need to say. We open at midnight because we need to get paid. So I'm hoping that the explanation is towards that, but I will just say it's disheartening to think that we're not taking into consideration financial background, race. I just
Is there a specific policy when you're talking about?
Yeah, 4303, I think the fair and
4304.
consistent discipline. I also think that parent organizations, I mean, what is so bad about taking into consideration someone's background? I personally believe diversity is our strength. In this school district, we are very diverse. I think that helps our students become global citizens. So I'm trying to understand why the policy committee is bringing this forward. And I'm going to ask to put this on action just because I'm not going to just blindly consent.
Okay, that's 4304, and which one, which other one?
I mean, all the DEI
All the
ones.
DEI,
I mean,
okay.
the 4150, 4303, 5010, and 7100, recruitment and selection of personnel.
Okay, so I did have a similar question about what the background was that, because typically we subscribe to the PLS, and the PLS gives us the guidance on when we change our policies. This is the first time I've ever seen where we've kind of jumped the gun on something. And I asked William about it, and William, you sent me an email today. Can you summarize
I'm happy
what?
to share a little bit more, and I did send an email earlier today to the board chair and to the vice chair. So the genesis of these, and I understand the concern, and that this was deliberated and discussed thoughtfully at the policy committee. But these changes, the chair's correct. Most of our changes, we follow what's called PLS, which is the Policies to Lead the Schools, which is put out by the North Carolina School Board Association. Here, the PLS is not necessarily recommended or required changes, but these changes themselves are based on guidance that we received from the North Carolina School Board Association. And these are in response to what's commonly referred to as the Dear Colleague letter that was issued by the U.S. Department of Education through the Office of Civil Rights back in February of this year. And in that, the U.S. Department of Education essentially clarified the Department of Education's view that race and diversity and equity is not part of the legal requirements under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. And so they basically put us and the school systems across the country on notice that these would no longer be accepted by the U.S. Department of Education. So I think to the point of the conversation about funding, that is a key consideration here. We are trying to satisfy, as we understand it, the requirements of the U.S. Department of Education. I can tell you this was not something that the policy committee did lightly, or without thought. We intentionally, strategically made these changes. There are other policies in play, but we strategically did it to minimize this as much as possible while still complying with what we understand as the guidance.
Okay, this is just from history, from those who've been here a while. We did have a OCR complaint regarding the 4303 on how we handled our discipline. I think we lost that, and we had to make some changes.
I think that
way back
might
in
have
the
been
day. I mean, this
before
is
my
more than 10 or
time, but
15
yes.
years ago.
Right.
But there was a discrepancy over discipline.
Yes, and we've been involved in OCR matters in the past related to those things. So these, like I said, are strategic changes that we hope there might be a need to do additional changes in the future, but we're hopeful that these, what we consider minimal changes to our existing policies, will be sufficient.
But are we opening ourselves up on this specific one because of the fact that we lost the case and had to change some things, or change some practices. And now we're gonna, if we take this off, does that open you up to something, or is it?
I don't think so. I'm not completely aware of the matter you're talking about, but no, I think we would be consistently, at this point, we'd be changing our current policy, but minimally so, in my opinion, to get in
Yeah,
compliance.
it was related to the C on that last page.
Right.
Yes.
I know what you're referring to, and it was my understanding at the school level that there was an OCR complaint, and part of the remedy was that we did staff training system-wide because of disparity of suspensions by race. So it was, I think, specific, not necessarily to the policy as much as to the complaint. That was my understanding as a staff member at the time. And I want to echo what our council has said, that the policy committee sweated over this one. This was a difficult conversation, and there was a lot of serious conversation around the topics in public education of changing this language.
Appreciate the clarification. Any other comments on this policies? Greg?
I will say, I didn't see the Dear Colleague letter until you sent it to us today. And as I read through that, it seems like the administration's concern, so the prime example was how Asian students were affected in college admissions. And so when we look through our policies, do we see that those policies create disparities like that, or are we just kind of doing a find and replace on certain words?
Yeah, I think we're strategically focused, and I can tell you that we're basing it to, like I said, on guidance both from the North Carolina School Board Association and also from Campbell Shatley, who was also our board counsel here, as you guys know, and do this for 30 plus school districts in the western part of the state. So they have the benefit of, since they have such a large number of school boards, their own analysis that they put out and share with CCS administration. So these changes are strategically focused on what they think are the most potentially objectionable language and could be found by the Department of Education to be objectionable.
Okay. Shannon?
I want to address policy 4150.
Is that one on here?
That's the first one, yes.
Okay, 4150, yep.
So in section D, number 4 and 5, and I preface this by saying I know Dr. Kapik and his staff are handling these properly, but in these it gives parents 5 days to write a written request, but the school system has the flexibility of, quote, will promptly render a decision. And then number 5, parents have to write a request within 5 school days for an appeal, but the school system has 20 days, school days, which is almost a full month to get back. And I just don't think that's fair to hold parents to a timeline that is 5 days if we're not willing to do that ourselves. So if the policy committee could look at that, so I'd like to put that on action.
Okay. It already is on action, but
Okay.
They need to go on action to be reverted back to the policy committee, or can we just do that if they need to?
okay, there's a discussion on, or are we either going to discuss just the red line items and send that request back to the policy committee, or do you just want to send it back to the policy committee at that point? But right now, these changes are proposed, so it is an action item for next week.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is there a timeline on this that we have to be cognizant of? I mean, is there a timeline? Because I know you're trying to get ahead of things, and I appreciate the advice, but if we need more time to consider some things, which, we didn't know this was coming down the pike until this week either. So do we have to, so in other words, if it's just action, we have to come back next week and still make a decision when it might not be something if it needs to go back to policy, that we can make a decision in a week's time.
I don't think you're going to change it in a week, correct? I mean, this is a first read, so this is bringing it out there to the public. We're considering making a change. Doesn't go into effect until there's actually a second read and a second vote.
Right, so what
This
happens
is an
at the
opportunity
second reading if
to
we
present
just vote it
present
down?
it to the public and stakeholders. If they read this and they have issues with some of this, they're welcome to come provide their feedback
Right.
in a public setting here at our comment section next week on it, if they'd like to. Well, we asked them to do that. But anybody can make a motion. If you want to send it back there, you're welcome to do that. I don't know if it's two different subjects. I mean, what Shannon is talking about makes sense, but it is not quite related to, I guess, the DEI questions. But again, you did make some other changes, right? So did you look at that one, or is that something that was thought about?
That we didn't. Are you talking about section 5?
Yes, what she's brought up. I mean,
We
you changed
did
something.
not
You
look
changed
at
something in section D, right? So
we changed. We took out the balanced calendar and cleaned up the timeline for when the window is for making the requests. I've got it written down here, the 5 and 20. If you guys choose to bring that back to policy committee, I've got that and can work with Dr. Ward to bring that up in policy committee. I would say as a member of the policy committee, our goal is to stay in compliance. So when this was brought to us, we did have lengthy discussions about this, ultimately wanting to stay in compliance. There's also seems to be moving targets with this, where it was presented, I believe, in January with a Dear Colleague letter. There was also a U.S. District Judge, Stephanie Gallagher, who wrote an opinion that said it doesn't apply. So there's lots of moving targets. There's also a state Senate bill, 227, that was passed and vetoed by the governor, overrode by the Senate, and now is on the House floor calendar for September 22nd. So there's a lot of moving pieces with this. And like I said, for the policy committee, our goals, we are brought things and we try to make the best decisions to stay in compliance and then bring those recommendations to you.
your focus was on the compliance.
Mm-hmm.
When she read through it, she sees something that may not be quite fair.
And that's something that we can bring back and have discussion on for if you choose for us to do that. Absolutely.
I just think it would make a better policy. At some point, we're all going to be gone, and like I said, I trust Dr. Kapicki and his staff to do this, but like I said, at some point, we're not going to be up here, and I think it would make a better policy for the future.
Can I just ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
Just to make sure. So section 5, where it says, in order to appeal to the board, the parent guardian must submit a written request within 5 school days of receiving the response from the superintendent. A hearing will be conducted pursuant to policy 2500. Hearing before the board will provide a written decision within 20 days. Is that what you're looking to review, the 5 days and the 20 days?
The 20 days that we have to respond, that's a full school month.
Okay.
I think that should be 5 days. Or the policy committee can work on that, but I think
Okay.
20 days is too much.
Okay.
And then above that, we'll promptly render a decision. I'm sure Dr. Kapicki is always prompt, but that's kind of ambiguous. Maybe we could put a 5-day or a 10-day deadline on that.
Okay, those comments are noted. Sam, did you have something?
I was just going to say, I think we've kind of gone to action.
Yes.
and
Okay, so
maybe next week we can finish this.
are we okay with the last two as consent, or we want to put them all in action? You're okay with consent on this side for the last two? Okay.
To have them all.
All right.
I'd like to have them all on action.
Oh, you want them all in the action? Okay. Even though they're not DEI related?
Right.
Okay, so those will all be discussed next week. Okay. 6.02, which is the approval of the second read.
We still have, I'm sorry, we still have, there was one policy, so the first 5 policies were all I grouped together for the DEI conversation. The last policy on this first section is 4125 homeless students, and this was a district request. So we have updated our policy 4125 to update our homeless students policy, and I've got Amy Jewell here in case you have any questions. There were several changes to this policy, and we wanted to make sure that we provided the best opportunity for our McKinney-Vento students who are classified as homeless, whether it's interscholastic activities, their participation, and we really stuck to our other policies but just clearly defined it in this. So we're still sticking to North Carolina High School Athletic Association policies, all of our other local board policies. It just kind of puts everything in one place.
Okay, so yeah, we would invite Ms. Jewell out here up to explain so we understand what we're being asked to vote on.
Absolutely.
Good evening, good evening. Thank you for having me up here. So as Mr. Palmer shared, we really wanted to bring our policy to support our homeless students up to date. It was a little bit outdated, and we, of course, as I've shared with you, have a rising population of homeless students that we're supporting. And so everything you see before you really just enhances and makes their protections very explicit. So we wanted to be very clear in not letting really anything be a barrier for our students who might be experiencing housing instability. We want to make sure that they can participate fully in scholastic and interscholastic activities. And then the one significant add-on I would say is we did add a section about unaccompanied youth. And so that came at the recommendation of our state consultants. And it just further explains what that looks like for an adolescent to come to school and receive unaccompanied status. And we wanted to make sure that all of those rights were extended to that group of students as well.
Okay, board members, questions on that one? Sam?
I was just going to say, as a member of the policy committee, I'm fully prepared to move that by consent.
Okay, we do have a request for consent on that one. Is anybody supportive of that? Heads are shaking here. All right, well, at least that one will make it to consent. Consent agenda for next week. All right. Now we'll move on to 6.02, policies for approval for second reading. Now these will become effective as of next week if you either vote on them individually or as on consent. So
okay.
Please review those for us.
So our first policy, 1700, governing principal removal of barriers. This was a required revision through PLS updates, which added Title IX. Policy 7335, again, was a required technical edit that really it just changed Twitter to X, which is its newfound name. 7820 was a required revision where we added Title IX. So these are all required changes.
So very, very minor changes. So.
Yes.
Consent. I got head shakes on this side, head shakes on that side. All right, so we'll move those to consent. Thank you, Mr. Palmer, for filling in this one.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to our next item, 6.03 is Chromebook purchase proposals, and we have Carl Sane coming back to talk to us. Welcome back.
Good evening again, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, Dr. Kopicki, and members of the board and viewing audience. I'm here to present a purchase proposal for student Chromebooks based on capital funds that have already been appropriated for that purpose. So the goal here is to obtain board approval to purchase 7,215 Lenovo 100E Chromebooks and related services from CDWG using the state contract 204A. We had appropriated $3,144,617 on capital outlay, and this uses almost all of that funding for Chromebooks. Wanted to share some feedback that we had gathered from school improvement teams last winter in the conversation around one-to-one and how many devices we currently have and what's being used at the schools. Obviously, we have access to data on what software is being used within schools, and we can track and see what teachers are using, what students are using, are they using appropriate software, about how many minutes a day are things being used. We just ask school improvement teams, what does our current one-to-one initiative look like, and this is the feedback that we gathered. We asked elementary school improvement teams to discuss as a school and submit feedback in a Google form, and then we asked the same of middle school teams. We did not ask high school teams. High school it would be a significant challenge to not be one-to-one in high school, but we really wanted the feedback from elementary and middle. You can see that 97% of the grade levels across our elementary schools responded that Chromebooks are used in most classes every day. You can imagine that the one-to-one setting for Chromebooks is logistically ideal for small group instruction, and then of course significantly for testing. Our internal data shows that students are typically on platforms for around 37 minutes a day, and then the top use in elementary school is iReady at about 14 or 15 minutes a day. This was last school year. In high school and middle school, 77% of the grade levels responded that Chromebooks are used in most classes every day. It looks like students are on a platform for about 45 minutes a day, with the primary usage being Canvas at about 16 or 17 minutes per student per day. I wanted to share some information on our current inventory. Our projections for the year were based on 35,500 students. Since 2021, we have purchased a little over 13,000 total devices. Last summer, you may recall that we purchased some iPads for kindergarten and first grade. Last December, we purchased a little over 2,000 Chromebooks. The only other purchases that we've made since 2021 were a few thousand Chromebooks. That means that we have about 40,000 devices on hand, but more than 2/3 of those are no longer under warranty. A Chromebook that is not under warranty can be sold for $1, for perspective. So our long-term refresh strategy, in order to remain one-to-one, would be to continue purchasing iPads every 5th year for kindergarten and first grade. For Chromebooks in grades, it should say 2nd through 12. I apologize for the typo. On a targeted refresh cycle of 4 to 5 years, that means we need to purchase about 40,000 devices over a 5-year period, which would be 8,000 devices per year. You can see the chart at the bottom that shows what we have purchased historically. This purchase would get us pretty close to that 8,000 device figure to get back onto a regular refresh cycle for Chromebooks. This slide details the purchase details for 7,215 Chromebooks. In order to get those into student hands as quickly as possible, this additionally pays for white gloving service, a Chromebook license, a Chromebook education license, and then a 5-year warranty. It is my understanding that we have never had a 5-year warranty before. Most of the Chromebooks we've had have either been 1, 2, or 3-year warranties. I believe last December was a 5-year warranty, but the majority of our 35,000 were not a 5-year warranty. So this should ensure a 5-year refresh cycle for these particular devices. You can see we got every bit of the money that was allocated that we could spend towards this purchase. As I referenced before, this uses the state contract. CDWG passes along Lenovo's manufacturer discount through the state contract. $227.74 per device would represent a greater than 30% savings over MSRP. So essentially, the proposal is to use the state contract to purchase these. The goal would be to refresh all of 6th grade and all of 9th grade. Last year, the Chromebooks that we purchased went directly towards 6th grade. This would refresh 6th and 9th. As you can imagine, the heaviest Chromebook use is in middle and high school. Specifically, it's actually middle school is where the most breakage occurs. With 7,215 devices, we would have some leftovers. That's actually more than we need for 2 grade levels, so we would probably push those into elementary school is the original plan. Does anybody have questions?
Thank you for the information. Board members, questions? Melanie?
So this is not to buy any elementary school Chromebooks. This is for middle school and high school.
The initial need is for middle and high school. It makes the most sense logistically to just go ahead and refresh an entire grade level at once. You can imagine from a teaching and learning perspective, we want to cause as little interruption as possible. So if we send it, it's easy for us to, we know exactly how many 6th graders there are, we know exactly how many 9th graders there are. That way we're also meeting schools' needs proportionally. That would only involve about 6,000 of these devices, give or take. So that would leave some extras that we could use to refresh the most high-need elementary schools.
Are these going home with them?
In many instances, yes. They do have a 5-year warranty. with the idea behind the 5-year warranty being if there's something that happens accidental that's broken, we would be able to get a new device under that warranty. If a student intentionally breaks or neglects the Chromebook, it would not be under warranty, but then in that instance, we have the student pay for the device.
So when you have the data for how much time they spend on the Chromebooks, that is only in class. That is not what counts when they go home?
So that actually does include any time that they are using those softwares that we're tracking, yes.
That seems kind of high for 45 minutes a day. I'm just saying. I would expect to supply Chromebooks for something that is being used a whole lot more than 45 minutes a day. So that's what I was clearing up. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah.
Keep in mind can I just mention that's an average per student per day. So you can imagine there are days where students are testing and they would use it more. There are certain days where students are maybe not on the device much at all. So the way it averages out is 45 minutes. To get to 45, I'm sure there are some schools that are over 45 and some schools that are under 45, but it averages out 45-ish per minutes per student per day across the 176 school days.
Pam, did you have any?
I was just going to say I would put this on consent.
Anybody here with questions? Catherine?
Now, do some high school students bring their own devices, or are they required to use a Chromebook?
To be honest, I can't answer that question. I would doubt that any students bring their own devices. I don't want to say definitively that they do not. We provide a device for every student.
So, if they have something different at home, do they still have to take that Chromebook home?
So
because you don't have a place at school to store it?
That's correct. So I know my daughters bring their Chromebooks home mostly so that we can charge them at home. Obviously, if we were to have less Chromebooks in schools, then now there's a cost associated with purchasing carts to make sure that enough schools have carts in order to charge the Chromebooks, to store their Chromebooks, to keep them safe and secure. So I can't imagine there are instances where students bring their own devices. Obviously, having the Chromebook is helpful for logistical purposes in your classroom. If a student's on their own device, they're going to have trouble accessing software, they're going to have trouble accessing the network. I don't want to definitively tell you it doesn't happen, but...
Well, we do have a teacher here on this can kind of help us.
Yeah, so I think the Chromebook situation does look different at every school, but I am going to advocate on behalf of the EC department. It is one of the primary ways that our students do receive accommodations. So our Chromebooks allow text to be read aloud. It allows for print to be enlarged. It allows for text to speech for our students who have those as accommodations. So for me, it is extremely important that our students do have access to a Chromebook. Not saying that teachers aren't willing to sit there and do all of those things for students, but I do think that it helps that accessibility feature, and that is something that we really do need to take into account when it comes to making a decision about the Chromebook purchases.
Okay, thank you, Madison. All right, anybody else with questions?
Can I answer,
Greg. Greg, and then was it Catherine?
No, it was Mr. Kubicki.
Oh, Dr. Kubicki, I'm sorry. I missed your mic.
So our policy 4318 kind of guides that all of our students are using the Cabarrus County School, that we provide them with the computers, and then the expectation is that they're going to use the CCS provided device for all educational purposes. There's very limited circumstances where they're using their own. We strongly discourage that, and the policy kind of guides that they use the ones that we give to them.
Thank you. Greg?
Yeah, I don't really have any problem with this particular request, but when we come back to looking at elementary schools, I wonder if some administrators would be willing to leave the one-to-one policy if we were able to give them the savings back to spend for other purposes in their school. Is that even an option, or are these funds coming to us in a way that they have to be spent on this technology?
So, Carl,
Dr. Kubicki?
So I would say that that's a really long conversation, because that would involve a lot of curriculum decisions that Mrs. Reeves would have to be involved in, Mrs. Hayes and Dr. Parker. this is but a lot of people, because yeah, the testing requirements from the state requires us to use the technology. Then with the software things that we do in terms of benchmarking, iReady, the software systems that we have in place, would be very difficult to replace. I'm not saying that. So I would say to you that I would discourage pulling that technology out of the elementary schools. What I would encourage is appropriate use, and to Mr. Sain's point, and is to continue to monitor the usage, that kids aren't, I know they're not sitting on a computer all day. We want as much direct instruction with the teacher to the student as possible, but and then I think of a computer this way. It's a supplement, just like a textbook is a supplement to instruction. It's not the thing that drives instruction, it's a supplement to instruction.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you're saying. But what I am sort of questioning is if students are spending less than 40 minutes a day in elementary school, and if we enabled administrators sort of make some decisions in that area, they may be able to come up with creative ways to share that equipment so that they don't have to make those compromises, and maybe we get off we wean ourselves from this perceived necessity of having one-to-one devices in those elementary school grades.
And I don't think in the elementary school we are 1-to-1 K-3. It's more iPad touch. It's more 2-to-1, if I'm correct in that.
Right now we have enough devices to be 1-to-1 in elementary with iPads.
We've talked quite a bit about to your point, Mr. Mills, we've talked a lot about possibly reducing some of that to a 2-to-1 situation where we could offset some of that funding.
Well, we promoted ourselves as a 1-to-1, so we are going to change.
Well,
have those conversations.
3-to-12, we certainly are, and as Carl just said, if we get the iPad situation, elementary schools would make us. It is a 1-to-1 situation. What I'm trying to say is, what we're trying to do is take a hard look at the K-3 and what is the requirements to your question, Mr. Mills. Like, do we really need to be 1-to-1 in elementaries? Could we be 2-to-1 or whatever it may be?
The two logistical challenges, we reference testing. So all students in 3rd grade need to take 2 giant assessments, but they actually take that reading assessment multiple times throughout the year. So that poses problems. The one thing to consider is a lot of adults don't turn their computer on and off because it takes so long to turn back on and get everything up and running, right? So yeah. So the second logistical challenge is in a small group situation. A lot of our small group differentiation, whether it's for students with disabilities or just in a regular classroom with students with varying levels of instruction, as students rotate through those small groups, if you're not 1-to-1, you've essentially got to turn the computer off and take 5 minutes for that group to be ready to get going again. So there are some logistical challenges with the small group instruction and then with testing that would be things that would need to problem solve.
But anyway, these are ideas that people could propose, and you can vet them through the budget process.
That's right.
The other question I have, I tried to find what was the most recent invoice for Chromebooks. The one I found was December of last year. Unit cost was $380. Unit cost this time is $409. Not a huge difference. It's 8%. But I'm wondering, is that inflation? Is that tariffs? Is that to be expected? Are we getting additional software as a part of this purchase?
There's no additional software. We were concerned about a tariff situation. The money for this funding was, again, this is already approved capital funds. That money became available in July. We reached out immediately to see what we could get that was already over here in the States, that we did not need to worry about the tariff situation. We were told that this quote would be good through the end of September. The increase of 8%, to your point, it's my understanding that's just the increased costs associated with inflation.
Thank you so much.
Okay, looks like we all understand what we're being asked about. Are we okay with consent, or do we want to action? Consent? Consent over here, consent on this side. Okay. Add that to the consent agenda, and we'll move on to our next item, which is 6.04, and this is a successor contract to Public Consulting Group, and we're bringing Mr. Penn back to talk to us about this. Welcome back.
Thank you. So just to give a little bit of background, Public Consulting Group, PCG for short, has served as our district Medicaid claiming consultant for about 15 years now. We've had a very strong long-term relationship with them. They've also served as a consultant to the state since 2017, and our most recently executed contract with them was back in 2018. And as I was going through their contract, I noticed it had an evergreen provision in it. So evergreen, for those of you that aren't familiar with the term, means the contract automatically renews unless you cancel it, something for like at least 30 days before the contract expires. I'm not a big fan of evergreen contracts. I don't think our attorneys are a big fan of evergreen contracts, right? It's not great policy to get into having evergreen, because somebody's got to manage the contract and remember that it's got that evergreen clause in it. I reached out to PCD management and said, listen, I'm not looking to change the relationship at this point, but I do want to change the contract and make sure that we're on decent terms going forward, so that if there was ever a me successor, that I'm not the one necessarily managing the contract, but understands that there is an end date associated with it. They came back and proposed the same terminology for pricing for the next 3 years as part of the base contract, plus two one-year extensions beyond that. Now, full transparency, I wasn't 100% sure if this contract even needed to come before the board. So the board policy is for anything over $250,000, it has to come before the board. We would need to collect every single dollar that's available to us from Medicaid that's owed to us in a year for this to trigger that amount, right? Because it's a $45,000 base fee, and then everything else is variable based on the level of collections that we receive. And there's two different pricing tiers. One of it is 13% of what we take in, and the other one is 15% of what we take in. But out of, I'd call it an abundance of caution, I want to make sure the board was aware that this contract was being out there and was being changed to reflect the fact that we're trying to get away from these evergreen contracts and get to something that's more term limited. Okay. But again, we've enjoyed a very strong relationship with Public Consulting Group. We meet with them on a quarterly basis at least, just to review sort of where we are with the Medicaid claiming process, what's being owed to us by the state, what expectations are around collections. They do a very strong job for us. So it's more technicality to get away from that evergreen proposal and make sure that we have something that's more term limited going forward.
Questions from board members? All right, so I did have a couple of questions.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Greg.
Since we're moving away from evergreen, will we put this out to bid at some point? Are there different
Potentially,
companies that do
if
this?
we felt that there was a need to do that. My understanding is there's only 2 major competitors in the state that operate right now. I'm not sure I'm going to share the public comment that I heard from talking to some of the others about the other ones that are out there, right? I'll just leave it at that. But it does give us the opportunity to go out knowing that we've got a 3-year expiration 3 years from now to say, okay, if we want to go out, we're not satisfied with that relationship, or we think we can at least test the market for better pricing, it would give us the opportunity to do it then.
Are there any districts that do this in-house?
Not that I'm aware of, and that goes all the way back to Connecticut. This is a fairly complicated process, that there's good value in making sure that you're working with an expert who really understands the Medicaid claiming process well, to make sure that you're maximizing the amount of dollars that are available to you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So this is a software program is what this is. Is that right?
It's more than that. There's reporting tools that work on a software package, but there's other stuff that goes into this and making sure you're tracking your time, you're being responsive to the surveys that go out there on what you're working on. So there's time measurement that's involved with this. There's rostering that's involved. There are calendar days that are involved. So it's a fairly complicated process. And part of the reason it is that complicated is why it takes us so long to get the money approved. All that stuff has to be audited before they're allowed to release funding to us.
But it is an electronic process for getting reimbursed for Medicaid, is that?
Yeah, the claiming process itself sits on their platform. That is something that we're able to do electronically with them.
So Google searches this, they've got different terms, different school systems. Some look like a lot better than what we have, but that I don't know what the size of the systems are, so I couldn't really judge. And then secondly, my big concern is student data protection and what protections does this company have. We just had this big issue last year with the power school. I don't want to see something like that, especially this very sensitive data.
To my knowledge, they're not touching student data.
Okay.
It's only the time of the employee that's involved.
Okay, if you can verify that for next
I can
week.
do that, sure.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right, are we wanting to put this on consent or action?
Sounds like
Have
you
some
can put it on action because you want verification on that point, right?
I think you can get that information to me, but
Up to you.
if you can get it to me by next week,
That's fine.
otherwise we'll take it off of consent. But
Okay.
at this point, I'm okay with consent.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so we'll add that to the consent. Thank you, Mr. Penn. And moving on to the next item, 6.05. We have Concord Middle School Field House repairs, and we're inviting Mr. Chuck Taylor to the podium. Welcome.
Good evening, board members. Dr. Kopicki. Tonight I am here to ask for your approval of the bid for the repair work to the Concord Middle School Field House. I would definitely like to preface this with, this is another one of those, I've been working on this for 11 years, trying to get this done. So I would greatly appreciate your consideration tonight and approval. I was also asked to give a little bit of background on the field house. The field house itself is in a state now and has gotten worse over the last several years. We actually have a 6.5-inch deflection in the wall from where the hydraulic pressure and the soil pressure is pushing against that wall. It's causing a lot of water intrusion. The entire electrical system in that building needs to be completely redone because of the water damage. So it's not unsafe to use, but it will be shortly. We really need to get this building repaired and move on this. In 2024, we brought it through the budget process, and I made it a point to note in here a budget process that works. That field house has not always been the highest priority in that category. It is now. We didn't just pick it out of the blue. This has went through the budget process. It waited its 11 years, and it needs to be done. Are there any questions?
Okay, do you want to explain what exactly is getting fixed, or just the electrical and the gap? Or?
Actually, this is repairing the foundation. We're going to dig it out 20 feet all the way around the building. We're going to repair the structure. As I said in a report quite a while back, we're actually going back in time. We're using a buttress type system to push against that wall to help it stand up. But we're also going to repair all the waterproofing.
And then what kind of a warranty do you have for that?
A year.
Just a year?
That's standard on construction.
Oh, how long do you think it'll last now without having to go back to it?
We'll all be long gone before that wears out.
Okay, thank you. Board members, questions? Greg?
Just one quick question. The alternate number 1, the stairs for $64,000. You're not asking for that. You want the...
No, sir.
Okay.
We pulled that out.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody on this side?
I have
Jen?
several questions.
All right.
Okay, I understand the structural engineer letter, but who is this company called SB Design Group?
SB Design?
Yeah.
That's the engineer.
But the engineer was a Ruggles engineer or something like that?
Yes, ma'am. What happens a lot of times on these repairs and installations, whenever we're doing this kind of work, the company that is actually doing the drawings and the design will call in an expert engineer, in this case a structural engineer, to sign off and help devise the plan for the repair.
And is that James Stewart? Is he employed by the school system?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
He's a private contractor.
Okay, my second question is, so you originally estimated this at $350,000? I think it's on the agenda.
Well, it came in at $349,451. We were funded $287,998.
When you get those original estimates, where do those come from? How are those?
Those are created by myself and my staff.
Okay, because I do cost estimates every day. Do you use a computer program, Marshalls and Swift? How do you come up with the estimate?
Most of our information comes from RS Means, ma'am.
Okay. Now, this quote here, how many quotes did you get for this, or how many bids?
3.
Okay, because this quote here doesn't really have each item broken down. Is that normal?
That's just the scope of work, yes, ma'am.
Did we see the other 3 bids?
I believe I did submit those.
Because that might have been before we got on the board here.
They're not on board docs.
Okay.
So we didn't see the other 3 bids?
Not on board docs.
Okay.
I'll be happy to
Okay, you can
supply
send it
those
to you.
for you.
Because this is the same company that did the kitchen at Central Cabarrus, right? I went
Yes,
back and looked
ma'am.
Okay. All right, and I guess my only other question is, a lot of this to me looks like landscaping quote work as far as digging out.
The majority of the work is the excavation and the repair work to the existing building, and then actually repairing the foundation. It's a lot of waterproofing as well.
Okay. And the company can only offer 1 year warranty for the waterproofing.
That's pretty much standard with any construction. Even our new schools only offer a year for warranty.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions?
All right, Sam?
I'm not a builder or contractor or engineer, but I had questions about that building from day one, and I think this is validating that concern. Water doesn't like running uphill.
No, sir, it doesn't.
All right, board members, we know what we're being asked to vote on. Either can we put it on consent, or you want to put it on next? Consent here? Consent on this side? Consent? Shannon?
That's fine.
Okay. So that'll be on consent as well. And don't go anywhere, because you're on the next one too. So we have 6.06, Weddington Hills Elementary School classroom flooring replacement.
Okay, so for this one, we've already done the common areas. We talked about this not too long ago. This is the subsequent year. We have the funding for it. It went through the budget process. Are there any questions on this? This is for classrooms.
Is this done in the summertime? How are you going to do that?
This will be taking place after hours, weekends, or through the summer. Probably a combination of all. A lot of times they can get in and get this done through the school year without actually interfering with school.
Well, even if you're not there during classroom time, you're still interfering with
No, we would not be there then.
the teacher in their classroom and how they have it set up and everything. So, okay, so there is a plan though, or there will be a plan?
Yes, sir. Normally what we do is we like to utilize a combination of our staff to help the school move the items out of classrooms in the evenings. They come in and do their work, and then they'll put them back for the areas that they're doing. The majority of the work will happen over long breaks, summertime, but there may be instances where we get in there and we're able to get some of it done.
Okay, again, we're looking after our teachers and you're moving stuff around. Probably best to
We
do that
always
when-
take care of that.
Probably best to do that when we're off. Questions from the board members? Shannon?
Well, I'm just trying to learn all this bid process. So this is the same company that did it for 2 other elementary schools. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. They're the representative for Mohawk Flooring Company.
Which is on the state contract.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any other companies nearby on the state contract? Was this bidded out? How many bids did we get on this?
Well, this was through state contract, so
Okay.
it's already pre-bid.
Okay.
The state has already executed that bid process.
All right. Just trying to learn how this bidding
Yes,
process
ma'am.
goes.
Happy to answer your questions.
Board members, other questions? Pam?
Are these those no wax floors that we're supposed to be so excited about?
Yes, ma'am. I was just waiting on you to jump up and start dancing.
And so far, we've had good comments on the flooring that we have put in.
Yes, sir. I have to tell you that the 3 schools we did this summer, all the schools were very excited about the amount of time their custodians had to spend on other things than waxing floors.
And there's the 1-year warranty with all this too, right?
For the flooring?
Yes.
No, sir. That's a 20-year warranty.
20, okay, good. All right, board members, we consent? Consent? All right, and the last one is a similar, this one's for Cox Mill Elementary School.
Basically the same thing. We did the common areas in the schools. On the last run this year, we were funded for the classrooms. And I will draw attention to, you were asking about the bidding, ma'am. So if you notice, I get questions a lot of times about why we're higher when we request the money than when we bid it. When bids come in on bid day, the last thing you want to be as the customer is low bidder. Then you become the tail wagging the dog.
Shannon?
Well, I understand the concept of wiggle room. So yeah, I agree with that. I just, sometimes it seems like there's a lot of wiggle room. So, and like I said, I'm learning this process. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, board members, any other questions on this one? We know what we're being asked to vote for. We'll add this to consent. Shakes on, head shakes on this side, head shakes on that side. All right, well, you can.
This is somewhat related. As I mentioned earlier, we visited 2 schools yesterday, and I'm sure the other schools are equally immaculate, but we all noticed those schools were, I mean, just unbelievably clean. I mean, it was really something and I'm sure the other 40 schools are the same way, but it was, I think we all noticed.
Thank you very much. And I didn't want to call Carl Sane out for not mentioning that during his presentation, the educational adequacy of all of our schools.
We do appreciate the staff and the work that goes in, because it's not easy. It takes time to do that. So.
It does take time.
All right, thank you, sir, and that's all the items we had for next week's action.
Thank you, and have a good evening.
We do have a need for closed session, so the long paragraph is on there. I don't know if I'm going to read that, but essentially it's on board docs for you all to read. I would need a motion and a second. Go into closed session. We have the motion. We have a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, so we are now going to move into closed session and say goodnight to our listening audience. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week.